we see blood on the ground of the skate park, as we see Rob standing over his dead daughter, as Ragnar looks at him and says,
"Yeah, look at me. Do we have a partnership or not?"
Rob looks at Vel and the others, and he notices how terrified they look, as he makes the choice and says,
"We're all yours."
Ragnar smiles as we see a big van shows up, as the Skull Hunters take everyone and put them in the back of the van, as Ragnar says,
"We'll be at Wyoming by the end of the day."
As they all pull out, we see our group in the back of the van, as Rob looks at everyone, covered in blood, and says,
"They were the predators, and now we're the fucking prey."
"10 days later, we see Ragnar driving a fancy car as he's driving over a bridge, as we then see him say,
"Ah, home at last."
He drives across the bridge as we see a huge village of people, as we see a huge casino building at the top of a hill, as we see this is Ragnar's home, Wyoming. He parks the car and steps out as he walks towards the casino resort, as he walks past a few guards, as he then gets into an elevator, as we see him go down to the underground parking garage. As the elevator door opens, we see everyone. Rob, Mara, Ryder, Vel, and Holly all sitting in the corner on a cold floor. As Rob stands up to Ragnar and says,
"It's been 10 days you've kept us locked up in here."
Ragnar says,
"Yes, and hopefully not one less. Rob, come with me."
Vel stands up and says, "How do we know you'll even come back with him in one piece?" Ragnar says,
"Well, that's simple, darling. Good behavior and loyalty. That'll go a long way for all of you."
He walks away with Rob as we see Rob and him in the elevator. As we then see Rob is looking at the 3 guards in the elevator with Ragnar. As we then see he's counting how many different soldiers he sees. As Ragnar says,
"You won't look at me. And here I thought 10 days might have been effective for you to get with the program. But if that's not enough, then I'll have no other choice but to kill another one of them. This time, though, it'll be your choice."
Rob looks nervous and says,
No, I understand, boss."
Ragnar smiles and says,
"Wow, you called me boss again. It feels like time never moved."
We see Ryder in the garage with the others, as we see he's trying to make a makeshift weapon out of wood, as Mara says, "Stop, you're gonna get yourself killed." Ryder says, "Well, at least I'm doing something. And as soon as they come in that front door again, I'm gonna make real quick work of them." As we then hear, a camera is moving showing they're being watched. As Ryder then gets up looking pissed off and looks at the camera and says,
Well, now that you see me, I might as well announce it to you. I am your worst nightmare waiting to happen.
Mara says, Stop, it's gonna go too far. Ryder laughs and says,
Look at us. I think it's done gone too far.
We see Ragnar takes Rob to a fancy room, as we see food laid out and classical music playing in the background, as Ragnar says,
This place will be yours for the time being, till you get adjusted for now. Rob says, What about my friends? What the hell is this place?
Ragnar says,
Wyoming was passed down to me by my father. You met him a time or two. The place had to go somewhere.
Rob says,
This is a casino and resort?
Ragnar says,
Sure is. Although we've expanded a lot since then. We're a thriving community now that's been growing ever since. You follow my lead tonight and you'll get to see it, old friend.
Rob says, What's tonight? Ragnar says,
Well, since you didn't try to kill me when we left from there to now, I ordered my men to get your people all cleaned up and well dressed. We have a Christmas dinner tonight. Because like I always say, it's for our amusement and our enjoyment.
Rob says, Of course, we'll all be there. Ragnar walks out and says,
Hall 8 at 6 o'clock. Don't be late. I want to see you and your people there.
Rob says, We will be there. Ragnar walks out, as he is left alone, as Rob then takes a pen and paper and writes down 4 in the garage, 3 in the elevator, 2 in the mall, as he puts the note under the carpet, as he then looks out the window to see a huge village with Christmas lights all around, as we see Wyoming. We see Rob walking the village of Wyoming, as we see Christmas lights and trees all around. We see Rob walking into the main building, as he sees Mara, Ryder, Vel, and Holly sitting at a big table, as we see an empty chair on the other end. As Rob sits down and asks them,
Are you guys okay?
Mara says, Yeah, we're fine. You?
Rob says, Yeah, I'm fine.
Ryder says,
Well, they won't be. When I get my chance, I'm gonna.
Mara says, Hey, we'll get away, but not like this, okay? Rob says, Shh, he's coming. We see Ragnar walking into the building, as he is seen whispering something to one of his men, as he walks up and sits at the end of the table, as we see Rob on the other end of the table, as he says,
Hello, boss. Thank you for having us.
Ragnar says,
Well, thank you. You are here so I can talk to you all about this wonderful place of ours called Wyoming.
Everyone looks on edge as he looks at Mara and says,
Eat. It ain't gonna stay warm for long.
He smiles at her, as they all look nervous to eat. Ragnar looks at Ryder and says,
I saw your plan. You were making some weapons in there, trying to raise a little prison army. Good on you for trying.
Ryder says,
Yeah, it's temporarily on pause. It's gonna happen.
Rob says, Ryder, stop. Ragnar says,
Well, that's why Rob here was famous, and why you look like you came out of a mental asylum.
Ryder then punches the table and says, You are not gonna tell me what to do. People are looking for me. They're gonna find me. And as a matter of fact, when they do, I will take care of you myself. Ragnar smiles and says,
Rob, it appears like our little conversation may have had a little bit of a misunderstanding. So why don't you tell your man here to back down before this turns into the dinner scene from Django Unchained?
As Rob looks at Ryder and says, Ryder, you are out of line and you need to stop right now before they kill us all. Ryder says, Alright, fine. So what do we have in here anyway? Got some more of Urban's finest? Let me ask, is it male or female here on my plate, Ragnar? Vel Hazer pipes in and says, You know, the man has a point. How do we know that this isn't some kind of fuckery here? How do we know that we're not digging into human meat? Ragnar then looks at them and says, You don't? I'm sorry, was that a problem?
And you know what, I'm personally offended. If you really think that I'm anything like that bottom feeder Urban, then think again. I only kept him around because he had the numbers. And that leads me to why you're all here tonight. and they're not. You all had the strength to take out Urban, and that's a start. However, I don't see the trust yet. However, Vel, if you don't want to eat, that's fine. I'll have my man here take it and put it in the fridge for you later. We can't be wasting food now. Besides, this ain't an all-you-can-eat deadhead buffet.
Mara sees her chance to calm the situation down and starts fake laughing. She looks at the group and makes them follow along. As the group laughs together, as Ryder then says under his breath, that's a good one.
You fucking cocksucker. Ragnar says, you will all be assigned homes, you will all be having jobs, and you will all serve Wyoming as Rob's people. And thanks to him, you're all here. Bon appetit.
We see Rob walking to his room. As he then closes the door, as we see, he's taking off his jacket as he turns the light on. As he then sees Ragnar sitting on his couch with a gun in his hands, as he then says,
well, hey, Rob. Sorry for barging in.
Rob looks shocked and says,
what are you doing here?
Ragnar says,
well, dinner went well. I hope nothing like that will ever go on in the future. Wouldn't want to ruin your image in front of your people now, wouldn't you?
Rob says, it won't happen again. Ragnar cuts him off and pulls out the paper under the rug and says,
oh, it won't now. Well, what do we have ourselves here?
He reads,
4 soldiers in the garage, 3 soldiers in the elevator, 2 in the hall, 1 in the blah, 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 blah. Yeah, you understand all right. Very good work. However, our agreement is based on honesty. And this has clearly shown that I can't have this. So what's it gonna be, Rob? Because after tonight, I can at least think of a few of your people after acting out tonight that I could force you to kill in order for us to have an understanding. You wouldn't want more blood on your hands now, would you?
Rob puts his head down in anger and says,
no, sir.
Ragnar says,
well?
We hear a growling sound from behind Rob. He turns around to then see Frost. As we then see, it's just staring him down. As he then looks on edge, as we then see, there's still some dried up blood in Frost's mouth. As Rob just closes his left fist, and Ragnar says,
yeah, I still didn't clean her properly after that night. She left quite the mess back there. That piss you off, Rob?
As Rob then looks at him and realizes this is a test. As he then puts out his right hand and shakes Ragnar's hand and says,
there will be no more lies. We are here, and we are present. We are the prey.
Ragnar says,
wonderful. Welcome aboard, Rob. Oh, and by the way, I left you a little something. You're gonna need it for next week. I think you're gonna like it.
As he walks out, as Rob then stands there with his hands shaking, as he walks over to the couch and opens this box, as he then sees what's inside, as he then sees an electric guitar left in the box, as he says,
you want a little show? I'll give you a show, motherfucker.
"10 days earlier, we see Elara sitting inside the trailer inside of the trailer park as she hears fighting going on outside. As she grabs her gun and walks out the door, we then see Mara and Ryder have been knocked out as we see the prey are just standing above them as she pulls out her weapon, but then we hear someone comes up behind her and says,
long time no see,
as she gets knocked out. A few hours later, we see her waking up in the woods. As we see some of these men are walking up to her, we see Mara and Ryder are now gone, and they are nowhere to be seen. The man walks up to her and says,
"You're awake? Finally."
Elara says, "Where's my son?" The soldier says, "Oh, he's at headquarters by now." Ragnar had quite the place for them.
You, on the other hand, you're going somewhere else.
Elara says, "Where are we going?" The man says,
"Well, you have a wonderful place, not too far from here. Maybe, with you with us, they'll let us right into your beautiful Lincolnville."
Elara says, "Well?" She headbutts the man to the ground as he then falls into the snow, as he then gets up and says,
"Oh, yep, that's her, gentlemen. That is definitely her. All right, let's get moving."
Out of nowhere, the men get shot down by a man with a gun as the blood splatters onto Elara's face. As we see, Elara looks relieved and says, "Took you long enough, Hunter Pants." Hunter Pants helps her up and says,
"Who are they?"
Elara says, "A problem.
A real problem.
We better get back home. The clock is ticking, and we're on a timer here. Our life depends on it." We see them walking through the woods, as we then see the snow is starting to fall, and Elara says, "We gotta get back home. What the hell are you even doing out here?" Hunter says, "Been looking for you. You were gone longer than you'd said you'd be. I had a feeling something happened out there. Sure enough, I find you tied to a tree."
Felt a little too damn familiar.
Elara says, "Well, I'm glad you're here." They hear something walking up behind them as she says, "Did you bring more company?" We then see 4 more skull hunters behind them with weapons, as they then see them from far, and Elara says, "Run!" They then run as fast as they can, as we see a house from far, as Elara says, "Come on, there, we can pin them in that way." Hunter says, "Smart thinking." As they then go inside the house, as we see them make it inside, as they push the couch up to the door and tie it shut, as we then hear these men banging on the door, as Hunter says, "We gotta either find a way out or find a way through these fuckers." We see these men with their weapons out at the door, as we then hear a growling sound behind them. We see a big black dog jumps one of them and starts ripping them apart. Hunter looks worried and says, "No." He opens the front door and shoots 2 of them with his handmade gun. Elara then stabs the other one in the belly and kicks him down, as Hunter then stabs the last one in the head. As we see him look at his dog and says, "Hey boy, are you okay? Hey, I told you to stay in the buggy." The dog barks and Hunter says, "Well, anyway, I'm glad you're here, boy." Oh shit. As they see, the guy Elara stabbed is still alive. Hunter says, "Yeah, let's put this wild animal down." Elara stops him and says, "Not before he answers my questions. We're getting my son back." We see the skull hunter tied to a tree, as we see Elara and Hunter sitting on a log towards him, as we see Elara sharpening her knives as she says, "Well, it's been a while since I've done this. However you fuck with my family, you're fucking with me." The man says, "Oh, is that right? Hey lady, aren't you a little old to torture someone?" She stabs him in the leg as he screams. Elara gets up in his face and says, "That hurt, huh? Let's put it like this. You're gonna feel it every time, until eventually there'll be so many holes in your leg, you're gonna beg me just to rip it off." The man says, "I'm not telling you a damn." She stabs him again, and she says, "Now you hear me? I'm looking for my son, and he and some of the people I know were taken last night, and I'm getting them back. And you're gonna show me how I'm gonna do just that." The man laughs and says, "The only safe place is Wyoming, and yes, your son is with us. But only if he cooperates, he'll be alive. Look, you got a lot of fire left in you, and I can tell, but I don't have control of what happens, alright? We have separate places that we run in the general area, alright? And Lincolnville will fall under those locations soon enough." Elara says, "Alright." She pulls out a map and says, then you're gonna show me every location on this map that you people have. The man says, you think I'm showing you? She cuts off 2 of his fingers as he screams out and she says, show me, or I take another. He looks like he's in pain as Elara says, show me. I could do this all day here. Hunter's just standing there with his dog as Elara goes to cut another one of his fingers as he says, okay, please don't do any more, okay? I'll tell you, please. I have a family. I have a wife. I have 3 kids. And they can't live without me, please. I'll show you, okay? Elara backs off and says, okay, then you understand that I can't live without my son. So? You're gonna show us every spot on this map where you people operate. We see Hunter circling several different places in the area, and Elara says, are those all? The man says, that's everything. Elara looks at Hunter and she says, okay. The man says, so, can you let me go? Or she stabs him in the neck as blood gushes out as she says, all right, we know where to look. Hunter looks a bit put off and says, hey, Elara, what the hell was that? He had a family, Elara says, and a man like that would say anything. And even if he did, they're better off without a monster like him. Hunter says, and what if his family is real? I mean, what do we do knowing that they're without their parent? Elara looks at him and says, because it's not ours, as she just walks back into the house. We see Hunter and Elara walking through the house as Elara says, we'll stay here tonight, head back by morning. Hunter says, all right, I'll keep first watch. Elara goes upstairs and checks the rooms, as we then see a bloody bathtub with another dead skull hunter on the floor. As we see, it's the same house Jade was hiding in before. As we see Elara goes downstairs and says, it's clear, we'll be fine here tonight. The next day, we see Elara Hunter and his dog are walking the roads. As we see tire marks in the mud. As we see 2 dead horses as they run up to this, and Hunter says, they took our buggy. They killed our horses. Damn it. Elara says, these people are poking the wrong bear. Come on, let's get back. We gotta figure out how we're gonna deal with this. Later that day, we see the sun going down as we see them walking through the woods, as we then see a big village in the distance on a hill, as they stand in front of it from far, as Hunter asks Elara, you think they'll be ready to deal with something like this? Damn it. Old man's gonna be pissed. Elara says, no, but we're gonna do it anyway. 10 days later, we see Vel waking up to see a blizzard outside her window, as she then says, oof, glad I'm not in Toronto anymore. As we see her walking around the casino, as we see her walk outside, as we see all of the snowfall, as we see a soldier walk up to her and they say, Vel Hazer, correct? Vel says, depends on who's asking there, floppy tits. Are you a little bitch boy who cowers in fear? Or did you just pull on Ragnar's dick enough to where he actually believes you're loyal? The man doesn't answer the question, but he does say, I'm just here to inform you that Ragnar wants to see you for the day. Vel says, ooh, an adventure. Well, that seems way more up my alley than these gambling fucktards at their fucking machines acting like this place is fucking normal. The soldier says, please, come with me. As Vel says, bottom feeder it is. We see the sun setting as we see the prey walking through the woods with lit up torches, as we see Vel and Ragnar getting into a boat with some of the others. As Vel says, where in the flippiting fucking fuck are we going? Ragnar says, get on. She gets in the boat and he says, alright,
I didn't want to ruin the surprise, but I see that you're one step ahead of me, Vel, so that needs to change.
He gives her a gun and says,
Here, hang on to this for me. You're gonna need it.
Vel holds onto the gun in her hand and says, And how do you know I'm not just gonna shoot you when I get the chance?
Ragnar says, Well, because I've been told you're one of the smarter ones. Wouldn't really be the work of one of those, now would it? You'll need to hang on to that for me. Like I said, you're gonna need it.
We see a few men at the castle as we hear one of them says, Tugo, you see that? Tugo looks out to see several boats approaching. Tugo looks worried and says, Sound the alarm, get people to the wall and ready. Tugo and a few other men are there standing there ready, but then he sees Vel in the boat as he looks happy, but then he sees Ragnar pushing her forward and says,
Jeez, what do you know? I gotta listen to Mrs. West boss me around 24/7, and now I gotta listen to this fucking asshole all night. Well, ain't that a damn shock?
Ragnar is walking up to the castle with his men. As we see, there's a few on top that says, Vel, what the hell is this? Vel says, Let them in, guys. That's an order, come on. Besides, it's better that we bring them in all with us. That's exactly where we want you all, you deranged fucks. Tugo and his men walk out to see them. As they walk up to Ragnar and Vel, and Tugo says, Well, geez, boys, I thought Halloween just passed. Where in God's name have you been, Vel? Vel says, It's a long story, but these assholes here, they killed Dawson, and Rob and the rest of our friends are held captive. Tugo looks at Ragnar and says, Well, what makes you think our door is open? Ragnar says,
Well, you stepped out, didn't you? That's step one. Step two is a lot more complicated than step one. We're coming in to have a discussion. That's not a problem now, is it?
He holds a knife to the back of Vel's neck and says, Thank you. Excuse me. As he shoves Tugo a bit and walks in with his men. We see all the residents and the families walk out as they all look terrified. As we see Ragnar and the prey standing in front of the civilians, as Ragnar whispers to Vel,
Don't be shy. Talk to your people. Get them to feel safe. The looks on their faces is just killing me.
Vel says to her people, Anything they say, you don't listen. These people are a thorn in our sides, nothing more. Look, I failed Dawson, and I will fucking fix that. But Rob's crew and the others are still alive. Don't you worry. I will fix that. And I will fucking fix all that fucking shit that's stuck up these fucking fuckers' fucking asses. And I might be gone for a while, but I'm doing what I need to do to save the West family. Ragnar says, Alright, that's enough.
Now, I didn't tell you to preach war. But see, Vel, that's exactly why I took you on this little trip to begin with. Everyone else is doing their part, following the rules. Hell, even Rob, believe it or not. Ha! Despite our very rocky history, he knew when to stop. But you don't. The reason why my place has stayed the way it has for as long as it has is trust and honor. You don't seem to have any of those things.
We then see her hand on the gun, as he then says,
I see your finger reaching for that piece on you, and yes, very good idea. Vel, I want you to take that gun. Shoot one of your people right now. Your pick.
Vel says, Yeah, fucktard, that's not gonna happen. Ragnar says,
Oh, that's right. Damn, how rude of me. Can you please choose who you kill?
Vel says, My pick? Ragnar says,
I see I have confused you. Let me put it in simpler terms.
He gets up in her face and says,
Do it, darling. Pick. Or I will pick them all. Then I'll go back to Wyoming, pick off all your wonderful friends in there too, and I'll give orders for Athena to kill them. And she will.
Vel is starting to look a little nervous and she says, No. Ragnar says,
No? You see that? That is not good enough for me, Vel. Just something about it doesn't work.
We see how scared her people all look as she's looking at some of the young kids that look terrified. As Tugo then steps out and says, Take me there, ragtard. You will not regret it. Trust me. Vel says, "No, Tugo, stand down. I'm not killing you." Ragnar says,
"You're right. You're not. But you're killing someone. And I don't remember asking for volunteers. So stand down there, tough guy."
Vel is starting to look worried and says, "Ragnar, please. Please, okay, I don't want to fucking... Please. You've already made me fail my people once. Please don't make me do that again. Maybe there's something we can do, okay? My people, we're very resourceful. I'm sure we can help work something out, okay?" Ragnar says,
"You can talk the big talk, but you can't walk the walk. So, you better kill someone, and you better kill someone now, or I will fucking kill you all."
Vel says, "Please, please." Tugo says, "Just kill me." Ragnar says,
"In a minute, I will if she doesn't decide."
Tugo says, Please, just kill me. I've done enough bad things to deserve this anyway."
Ragnar says, "Very nice story, Vel. But we're running out of time, I'm afraid. 10 seconds on the clock. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6.
Vel has a tear running down her face as she looks at her scared people and says,
"I did this for you."
She points the gun towards one of Ragnar's people, but as one of her men gets up in front of the crowd and jumps in front of the bullet, as Vel accidentally shoots the man, and the man goes down for the group. As Vel looks horrified and says, No, that wasn't supposed to." Ragnar claps and says,
"Atta girl, you did it. We'll work on your aim later."
He takes the gun from her hands and says,
"You did well today, but I'm afraid we're not done. There is something else that I do want from you."
Vel looks angry and says, "What do you want?"
Ragnar says, "Later. I want to see more of you, Vel Hazer."
As our characters are just looking around awkwardly, as Ragnar starts walking away, and Tugo says, "This ain't over, Ragtard. I'm gonna kill you all."
Ragnar says, "Shut him up, why don't you? Me and Vel has some personal business to get to."
As 3 men knock down Tugo and start repeatedly kicking him multiple times, as Vel just has to watch this, as Ragnar lights a smoke and says,
"It's a beautiful place. I will definitely be coming around here more often. Come on, Vel. We got some things to work out."
Back at Wyoming, we see Vel crying in her room as she hears a knock at her door and she says, "Who in the flipping flipper wants to see me now?" The Skull Hunter comes in and says,
"Vel,
"You were asked to go see Ragnar." Vel says, "Yeah, and what the hell do I have to do for him this time, huh? Do I have to suck him off or something?" The man says, "God, no. What kind of man do you take him for? He just wants to have a little chat." Vel says, "I'm done with chats after what he made me do. Now, if you don't mind, I'll talk to him in the morning, okay?" He keeps her from closing the door and steps in the way and says, "Not gonna work this time, Missy. He wants to see you and he wants to see you now. Oh, and he gives her a dress and says, he said to wear this." As we see Vel looks pissed. We see her walking up to him in heels, as Vel says, "Is this what you wanted?" Ragnar says, "Whoa.
Well, it's a bit tighter than I thought, but in a few minutes that won't matter anyway. You did good today, Vel, and good people deserve rewards."
Vel says, "I'm out of here." Ragnar says,
"Wait now, I didn't say it was an option, but I'll sweeten the deal here a little bit. You do what I want you to do right now, and you and your friends will get a promotion to a higher standards to this place."
Vel says, "Oh, what? Are you gonna make me lose with this thing on? And do things that I don't want to? Yeah, that's a real leader-like of you."
Ragnar says, Not exactly. But you could say I'll be leading the way in this one."
As he says,
"Go on, one piece at a time. Don't be afraid. No one's watching here. Isn't that right, Tim?
Tim says, "Nope, no one's watching or judging here, sir." Ragnar smiles and says,
See?
Vel says,
Fuck you.
Ragnar says,
Oh, we're getting closer.
Vel says, "Please don't, please." Ragnar says,
Please, girl. Those are some of my favorites back in the day. Now, I can't promise I'm as fast as I was back then. I'm a little worn out and slow, but slow can be good.
as he unzips his pants, as he says,
Go on. I started, you follow.
As she starts taking her clothes off, as she just sits on the bed and says,
Have at it.
As we see Vel has no other choice but to start fucking Ragnar, as he says,
Very good. Very good for one of the young ones.
As we see once again a tear going down her face. Later on, we see after it's over, Vel sitting in the corner of the room shaking, as Ragnar says,
That was fun. Round 2 next week, same time. Now what did I tell you to say to me?
Vel says, Thank you, Daddy. Ragnar says,
Now, here's how it's gonna be from now on. No back-talking me at the table. You don't question me, you don't talk back to me, and you will do exactly as I say. And if you feel the need to run to Rob, then hell, tell him. Tell him everything you can. It's not like he'd be able to do anything about it anyway. You are mine. You and your people. You're just toys for my amusement, lady.
He leaves her be as she just still sits there, as she sees a bit of blood dried up on her finger from the man she killed, and she says,
Sensei, please, help me, Sensei, help me.
She looks out the window as now she sees the snow has stopped. We see Rob playing his guitar in his room. He hears a knock at the door and says, Come in. Vel walks in looking a little bit nervous still, and he says,
Hey, haven't seen you around for a few days. You alright?
Vel says, I'm fine. Just people in here being people. It is what it is, I guess. Rob says, It is what it is.
Dang.
Since when were you a it is what it is type of woman? Vel says, Never. But I'm swallowing my pride, I guess. Rob says, No jokes, no remarks, nothing?
Jeez.
I guess I'm not the only one feeling the weight of this place.
Hey, look.
You can tell me if anything's wrong, kid, alright? I get it, you know. I know exactly what it's like working for a dipshit like this. Christ, I did work for a dipshit like this. Vel says, I'm fine. Rob says, alright. But if you're not, it's alright. I get losing isn't your style. So, if there's anything you want to talk to me about, you can say it. She looks scared and confused, and she looks like she wants to say something, but she just looks at him with a small smile and says, There's nothing. Rob says, Alright. Well, my day was boring as hell. How was yours? Vel just lays back and looks at him and says, honestly, same thing. As we then see a slightly scared look in her eyes. "60 miles out of Wyoming, we see Ryder and Mara being transported with a few other prisoners to somewhere, as Ryder says to the driver, So what does Ragnar have us doing today? The man says, You're being transported to one of our facilities. Mara says, One of. The man says, It's a factory. You're both going to be pulling your weight. You see, Rob impressed the big man, but it doesn't mean that we trust you all yet. Ryder says, Oh, well, I'm sure you're feeling real big and giddy now. I mean, you're sitting in the driver's seat, thinking you're leading the way. Thing is, You're trapped with the outlaws, motherfucker. We see them pulling into an old factory as we see a bunch of workers there outside clearing the deadheads on the fence. As skull hunters push them forward and they say, "Move, both of you. The enforcer is waiting." We see them take Ryder and Mara into a room guarded by men as they sit them down and the enforcer walks in and says, "Prisoner 485 and 486. You are both here because Ragnar is giving you the option to the path of success. You will be kept here until he sees fit. Ryder and Mara, you will be tasked to clear the crowd of the deadheads and you will fix the place up. We are looking to turn this place into an outpost for more new members of the Prey. You will help us make this place what it is." Mara says, "Thank you for giving us a second chance." Ryder says, "Oh, wow. That's it, huh? Shit, after everything we've been through." The enforcer says, "Be happy you're alive at all. Ragnar saw potential in you. But in here, it's up to me." Ryder says, "Fuck you." The enforcer says, "Be careful of your tone. Talking back is why you're here in the first place." As he points towards Mara, he walks away as Mara says, "Keep your shit under control. We'll find our moment by being smart and by giving it time." Ryder says, "Time? Time is the one thing we don't have." We see Ryder and Mara being escorted to a small room with two small sleeping bags on the floor as we see them get locked in as the Skull Hunter says, "Welcome to the shit end of the stick. You'll start tomorrow." Ryder and Mara are sitting in this dark room as he says, "Start tomorrow." What kind of fucking asshole is this anyway? Mara says, "Hey, we are at our most vulnerable spot right now. We gotta keep our heads down and just embrace this shit for a little while longer. They need to believe that we're following their ways. Because if not, I don't think we're leaving this place." Ryder says, "No. We kill them all. We find a way to take this place down from the inside. And we do it for the others. We do it for my mother. We need to do it in her honor." Mara says, "In her honor?" Ryder looks like he's holding back, and Mara says, "Ryder, I've been asking you for weeks what happened that night when you were taken, and you haven't been the same since. Tell me what happened." Ryder is shaking a little bit and says, "I killed her." Mara says, "What?" Ryder says, "The men were there. I heard something going on outside, and when I went down there to help you, they knocked me out. And I told her to stay put, and now, here we are. And she was nowhere to be seen." Mara says, "Look, you don't know that, alright? I mean, maybe they took her somewhere else." Ryder says, "Then why wasn't she at the skate park that night? Maybe if I just did things differently, didn't act out like I always do, tried protecting her more, maybe she'd still be here." Mara holds his hand and says, "Hey, you are not at fault for this, and she wouldn't want you to think that way. These people, they're gonna get what they deserve in time. They will, okay? I promise." They hug as Ryder starts breaking down and says, "How could I do this? How could I do this? How could I do this?" The next day, we see the cell door opens as the guard says, "Rise and shine." They take them both out of the cell as we see them get walked outside as they both get handed a small knife. As Ryder says, "Really? We clear the deadheads with one little knife." The Skull Hunter says, "That's your warm-up. Later you'll be tested." Mara says, "What kind of test?" The guy says, "If you're strong enough for Ragnar to give you a second chance, like you probably would claim you would, get to work." The guy walks away and Ryder says,
This ain't gonna go his way.
Mara says, well, for now it is. Let's just get through this. As we then see them killing deadhead after deadhead, as we see the skull hunters are just watching them from the other side of the fence. As we see Mara notices Ryder is just letting out all of his anger. As we can see, he feels the guilt of getting put in this place. Later on, we see Mara and Ryder looking very rough as they are sitting in the cafeteria with some of the other workers, as Mara and Ryder don't sit with any of the other prisoners. They go to a separate table by themselves. As they sit down, but as they're sitting down, the enforcer walks up to them with two men. And the enforcer just takes Ryder's tray of food and he throws it on the floor. Everyone in the cafeteria is looking at them as they put a plate of dog food in front of Ryder as he says, "Eat." Ryder says, "Are you fucking serious?" The enforcer says, "Son, ain't nothing about this isn't serious." "You damn right I'm fucking serious." Ryder then looks at the enforcer and says, "I should have killed you after what you did to our family." The enforcer says, Yeah, you probably should have. But you missed your opportunity, just like this one." Ryder says, "And if I don't eat this?" The enforcer says, "Well, let's put it in the simpler terms. You will eat every bit of this until you tasted every bite of it. Or we will start by killing this lovely angel right in front of you across the table. Then we'll proceed to kill everyone back in Wyoming, everyone that you know that's back there. And let me make sure I specify this, son. It takes one call. And if Ragnar hears that you didn't follow my instructions here today, it's over for everyone else you know. So, are you hungry?" Ryder looks pissed, as he really looks disgusted and says, "I will." The enforcer says, "You won't be doing anything else if you don't eat." Ryder then hesitates, but then he starts downing the dog food as Mara watches him eat it. As the enforcer then says, "That a boy!" Ryder then finishes the plate as the enforcer says, "Now, was that so bad?" Ryder said, "Well, how about you have a fucking bite?" He then throws up on the floor as the prey laugh at him, as Mara looks angry, and the enforcer says, All right. Point made. John, get over here, clean this up, why don't you?" Ryder says, "What the hell happened to you, man? Hell, you used to be cool, man." The enforcer says, "Well, I'm a damn mystery to me." As they walk away from Mara and Ryder, as Ryder says, "I did that for you." Later that day, we see Ryder and Mara sitting in the cell as Mara says, Are you okay?" Ryder says, "Aces." "You?" Mara says, "Hey, we just need to swallow our pride for a little bit longer. We made progress today." "And you followed their orders." Ryder says, "Yeah, and I swallowed my dog food too." "Is that swallowing my pride?" Mara says, "Just stop. I've got something I want to tell you." Ryder says, "What the hell is it? More bad news? Does more shit come up for us? Living hell that this place is in general? What the hell do we have going on now?" Mara says, "Not now." Ryder says, "Why the hell not?" Mara says, "Because this place is tearing apart who you are. And when we get away, we'll talk about it then." Ryder says, "Well, how the hell are we gonna..." We then hear someone walking up to the door as they unlock the door and let them out. As Ryder says, "What the hell do you people want next? Is it fucking cat food next, motherfucker? Or should I just kill you right now, you stupid?" The skull hunter says, "Shh. Keep your voice down. We're getting out of here." Mara says, "What the... Hunter? Is that you?" He says, "Your mother and I are here, and we're getting you both out of here now. Come on." As they all quietly start walking through the halls, trying to find an exit, Ryder then whispers, "Where's my mother? Is she okay? Is she mad at me? Christ, tell me she's alright." Hunter says, "She's fine. We came all this way to save you. Her orders." Mara says, "How the hell did you get the keys to the cell?"
Hunter says, I got it off of an idiot at the door. Little skinny twat. Fucking dumb fuck he was.
Out of nowhere, a bullet hits the wall next to them. As they start getting shot at, Hunter then gives Mara a gun. As she fires back, Hunter looks at Ryder and says, sorry buddy, only got one left. As they are firing back, he shoots two of the guys as Hunter says, this way! They run through the halls as we see the exit from down the hall. Mara fires the gun back to some of the other soldiers firing at them. As we see all three of them run outside to escape. We see them running through the outside of the factory trying to get out as we see vans lined up in the back. As we see two snipers on the rooftop start firing down at them from the top. As they then fire back, as Mara fires a few shots and says, I'm out. Hunter says, me too. He sees more men are coming and looks at the fence in the background and says, everyone get in. I'm gonna do some Duke boy shit. They get in as we see Hunter behind the wheel as he says, let's go. We see Skull Hunters in front as they are firing towards the van as he drives through and runs them over while they are still firing at them. Hunter then turns and rams through the fence as they break out of the factory, as we then see more Skull Hunters see them leaving, as a few start running after them. We see they drive for a bit, and then they pull over. As we see them get out, as we see it's foggy out, as we see the sun coming up, as Hunter says, okay, we're out, but we gotta get you both back. There's probably more coming to the... We see 4 Skull Hunters come out of the woods, as Ryder, Mara, and Hunter all look pissed. As we see the Skull Hunter says, well, little piggies, what are you both doing outside the pen? You're going back. Yo, the Enforcer is gonna get a kick out of this one. But as we see, they all get blown up. As Ryder and the others get down, they all look up to then see Elara walks up to them and says, they walked right into that one now, didn't they? Thanks for getting them back, Hunter. Ryder runs and hugs his mother and says, Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Elara says, for what? Did you kill someone you weren't supposed to again? Ryder says, no, nothing like that. I just thought they killed you that night. I thought I failed you. Elara chuckles and says, honey, I've come to realize that the only thing in this world that can kill me is me. Hunter says, we better go. More are going to be coming. Elara says, wow, where'd you get the van? Hunter says, took it on our way out. Come on, get in. Later that day, we see Hunter and Mara riding in the front, and Ryder and Elara in the back, as Ryder says, we telling the others back home about what's going on? Elara says, they already know. Everyone's worried about you too, so hopefully that'll keep their spirits up when you're back. Ryder says, how's Jamie? Is he okay? Hunter says, he's fine. Little buddy is doing great. It feels like he's gotten taller lately. Ryder says, yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Elara asks, so what did they do to you back there? Mara just looks at Ryder and he says, to us? Nothing but tell us exactly what we need to know to use against them. Back in Lincolnville, we see Ryder sitting in his house looking sad as he gets a knock at the door. And he opens the door, as we see an older man standing at the door with a case of beer in his hand, as he says, you're still alive, you crazy fucker. Ryder smiles and says, hey, fuck you, Brick. How you doing, man? He hugs the guy, and the guy says, well, how the hell are you? Ryder says, I've been better. The guy says, well, I got your favorite from the bar. We see them sitting on the porch drinking beers, and Ryder says, yeah, it was rough. The man says, but Rob and the rest, are they okay? Ryder says, yeah, they're okay. He just sits there and says, hey, can I ask you something? The man says, shoot. How can men like us be alive after all the unspeakable things that we do and just get a slap on the wrist?
I mean, men can get out of the magic kingdom no matter what they've done. And as long as they say the magic words. The man says, well, I got to believe we could be forgiven. And you and me, we've done things that we'd love to take back. Now, see, the only question is, are we willing to do those same things that you saw happen all those years ago? Ryder says, yeah, but I made one big fucking mistake. And I didn't mean it, they meant it. That's my calling. To get people killed. All life, when they meet me, just disappears. And that's the reality.
Later on, we see Ryder loading one of his guns up, as he hears a knock at his door. As he says, go away, whatever you want, it can wait till tomorrow. We hear Mara's voice outside the door saying, yeah, this is kind of one of those I need to talk to you now, not later type of situations. Ryder says, well, what the hell is so damn important this time of night? He opens up the door and she says, can I come in? Ryder says, yeah. They sit down and he says, you want a drink or something? Mara says, I can't. That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. I tried telling you earlier, but remember when we were goofing around a few weeks back? Ryder says, what? Are you? Mara says, I'm pregnant. Ryder says, you are? Mara says, look, I know this isn't what you wanted to hear. Ryder stops her and says, what? Are you kidding me? We're gonna have a baby? I'm gonna be a father. He picks her up and says, we're gonna be parents. Mara says, what? You're not mad? Ryder says, oh, hell no, I'm not mad. This is amazing. He hugs her and says, and now I get to be there. I get to be there for another life. We open with the sound of a crowd cheering as we hear a muffled voice saying, Athena. Athena. Hey, Athena. Athena snaps out of it as the Skull Hunter says, Rita and Dex have been located. Athena says, show me. Outside the walls of Wyoming, we see Athena driving a big bus with a few other men with her, as we then see up the road these two people running down the road. As Athena sees them, as one of the soldiers says, we should bring him back, let Ragnar handle this. Athena says, no need. She speeds up and he says, Athena! She then runs them both over with the bus, as she then stops the bus and they are both on the ground in pain. As Athena walks up to them and she says, you're fighting for air. Fighting for your life. I can tell. Now you really think you can leave unannounced and steal from Ragnar? Why? Dex says, me and my sister were brought in by Jack. And now he's dead. Killed brutally by that psycho bitch leader of the West family. And Ragnar has some of them just fucking living with us. And expects us to live among them after they kill our people? We're not going back. Athena says, well, lucky for you, you won't have to come back. And me breaking your back like this is for the guy that took you in, who gave you a warm bed to sleep in, food, shelter, and this is how you repay us? You know what, I'll let you live. If you just say those two magical words. Dex says, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please, don't twist the knife. As she then stabs him in the neck and says, apology unaccepted. As she proceeds to literally twist the knife. She then tells her men, nah, I call dibs. She shoots Rita in the head and ends her life as well. As she then says, get them loaded up. Ragnar's gonna want to see their faces. They get in and start heading back, as it then starts snowing. As she looks out at the snow falling down, as she looks happy and says, so beautiful. Back in Wyoming, we see Athena returning home with blood on the side of the bus, as we see a crowd of people in the streets with signs, as Athena says, "Get out of my fucking way. What the hell is going on here?" One of the men says, "I don't know. Pull into Ragnar's. Let's check on the boss." Ragnar is standing on the balcony with his arms crossed, as he then sees down below a crowd of people in the streets saying, "We want justice!" Ragnar says,
I'm disappointed, Enforcer.
he turns around to the enforcer and says,
Do you have any idea how two people as strong as Ryder and Mara proved to be could just get out like that? Unless, of course, someone wasn't doing their job. Someone like that in charge of one of my settlements. Well, I may have just made a mistake now. Yep, I think I made a mistake. Do you think I made a mistake?
Enforcer says, "No. The snakes are following my orders, but they saw their opportunity and they left, and I will find them." Ragnar pats him on the head and says,
I know you will, 'cause you have to. When you find them, I want you to kill Mara for me. Make Ryder cry. We'll make him stronger that way. I got a feeling about that one. Oh, and Rexer will be taking your duties at the factory. You're coming back to work here in Wyoming.
the enforcer says,
Yes. Yes, sir.
We see Rob walking through the crowd of people in the streets, as we then see he gets knocked down to the ground by one of them, as he then sees them just cheering, "We want justice! Bring the West family to justice!" Rob enters the building and sees a bunch of skull hunters inside, as Ragnar walks out and says,
Did you get a good look out there? Jeez. Jack gets killed, one of Wyoming's best surgeons, and now I got friends and family demanding that I bring them the widow's head.
Rob asks.
How did he die?
Ragnar says,
Well, why do you care?
Rob says, "Because it's my friends they want." "I'd like to think that I'm just as involved in this as you are." Ragnar says,
Well, you really have put your big boy pants on today, Rob. I'll tell you how we found him. Apparently Jack was tied to a tree. By the looks of it, he was stabbed multiple times and was brutally executed by one of your people. Now, do you happen to know someone that's capable of doing an act like that?
Rob says, "Plenty, actually. You really think just because you got us in here, others won't rebel?"
Because Ragnar, that's exactly what you have here.
A rebellion. Only question is, how will you handle it? Because the way I see it, if you don't do something soon, you can kiss this place goodbye. That's the problem with a place like this. You let it be peaceful for so long, eventually, that peace goes away. And the whole damn thing does after.
Ragnar says, Well, just like old times again, huh, Rob? People demanding to see us because they aren't happy with something, and we have to do this under protection, or it blows over.
Rob looks pissed and says,
Well, difference is here. I ain't the head they want.
We see Vel Hazer walks in and Rob says, "Oh, please, Vel, just don't say anything else to jeopardize our position here. It'll just make things worse for the rest of us." Vel still looks kind of scared and just says, "I didn't say anything." Rob looks a bit put off and says, "All right, well, what are you doing here?" Vel says, "Was walking the streets till I saw the crowd out there." The enforcer says, "Sir, we gotta do something about that." Ragnar says,
I know we gotta, damn it. I guess people need a little bit of a reminder of the home that they have, the home that I built for them. They're acting very ungrateful to me and what I've done for them. So I'm gonna handle this.
He pulls out a gun and Athena steps in the way and says, "Ragnar, that's not how we're supposed to do this. It's not how we should do this." Ragnar says,
Well, apparently they've forgotten. So I'm gonna give them all a reminder. Make an example of what you do when you define my orders.
Athena says, "No, you're not." As we see them just yelling back and forth as the enforcer gets involved too, and Vel tries speaking up and Ragnar says, "Stay out of this, Red.
You just wait your turn."
Rob sees how bad the room is getting as we see him start climbing up the stairs with his guitar, as he then walks out to the balcony on the top building, as the crowd just stops. And then he decides to play a song for everyone. Rob says, "Look, I came here with my friends about 2 weeks ago. I walked into this place thinking it was the end of my life. But it wasn't. This is so rare to see in a world like this. I've been thrown in cells, accused for things that I did to defend myself. I survived a horrible world for years. And that's not what you want, right? To defend yourselves? To make a difference? Well, let me tell you something. You did. Things are ugly inside this building right now. They don't know what to do about you. Things will be answered for, because they always are, in one way, shape, or form. Listen, you don't want to be out there. You'll either be alone, you'll meet people, you'll grow to care for them, hell, maybe even love. So one day, the world takes that away from you too. I lost my daughter because of this place. Ragnar brought me in, and now I'm here to tell you, though, that I miss her very much. And it led me here. And this place is unlike anything I've ever seen. So if you want justice, we'll get it for you. But not at the cost of this place. If we don't have to do this, if we don't have this, what do we have right now? There will be no justice. You'll be letting them win, because that is how you fall. So please, stand together with your loved ones, the ones you have. The ones you love, stand with them until you can't. As we see, they applaud him. As we see Rob with a smile on his face as he says under his breath, I still got it. He walks back downstairs to see everyone just looking at him. As he walks up to Ragnar and says, I did your job for you, boss. You're welcome. As he taps him on the shoulder and walks away. Later that night, we see the streets are clear and everyone has gone home. As we see Athena sees Rob sitting on the bench as she walks up to him and says, Where'd that come from? Rob says, What, that? I was a leader of people before. I know what they're going through, and feeling the loss is a tough thing to shape. Athena says, Oh, I know. And I know you, Rob Johnson. Well, as long as the crowd is cheering for you, that's all that matters, right? She starts walking away as Rob just sits there looking emotional. We see Athena walking into a big arena. As we see, it's dark. As we see, no one's in there. She hears something coming from the locker room, and she says, Hello? It's after hours. You should go home. It's past curfew. As she walks into the locker room, but as we see blood on the floor. As she pulls out her sword and says, Hello? Anyone in here? She then sees 2 dead bodies on the floor. Athena looks pissed, and then she sees in the corner of the room Holly sitting there with blood on her hands. As we see, she's shaking as Athena looks pissed and says, Holly, what did you do? As Holly is in a daze, as we see her hands are full of blood. Earlier, we see Holly in her apartment sharpening her knives as she looks at her necklace on the table, as it says, Morgan on it, as she still looks very upset. But then, she hears a knock at the door. As she opens it, as we see Athena says, Holly, right? Holly says, Yeah, what's it to you? Athena says, You're part of Rob's group, correct? You all are being tested in your own manner, and I was tasked to come here and teach you our ways. Ragnar says he wants to see what you can do. So let's see what you can do. Holly says, What can I do? Athena says, Please, come with me. As Holly walks with her, as she holds her necklace and says, "Lead the way." Later on, at 3 a.m., we see Ragnar driving through Wyoming, listening to Poker Plans by Arthur Morgan, as he says,
I've always got a plan.
as we see him bobbing his head back and forth, as we then see he pulls over into the arena.
Grab it, shoot it, plant it, Dutchie, I'm with you.
We see Holly with two swords fighting two guys at once. As we see, she's absolutely destroying these guys. As Ragnar walks in, as we see Athena saying, "Okay, and time. Holly wins round 4. Let's take 5. The fight happens tonight." Ragnar says,
How's the new girl doing?
Athena says, "Actually catching on pretty quick. It's clearly experienced by the looks of it." "No one catches on that quick." Ragnar says,
Experience. I like that. Whatever you do, don't let go of her then. I mean, if she truly is that good. Nice work, Athena. See you tonight.
We see the two guys sitting on the bench as Athena walks up to them and says, "You guys good to get back out there?" One of them says, "We might need more time." Athena says, "More time? Since when do you both need more time?" The other guy says, "More time to understand what kind of animal you dragged in here." The woman has experience. Athena says, I'm sorry. I'm having trouble finding a reason to understand why this is a problem for you both. Are you seriously saying you're backing out this close to the event? The man says, "No. I have to do this. I need to work my way up anyway. My family, my kids, they're counting on me, so I'm staying." "But maybe you can find us a different opponent," Athena says. "Absolutely not. Holly's staying in. She's one of my new favorites. I chose her for this because I wanted to see what she can do. She showed me, and you're showing me something I really don't want to hear. If you have a problem with your position, or if you have a complaint, take your ass up to the boss man and deal with it yourselves. Cry about it." She walks away, and then she turns around and says, "Halftime's over. Get up. Run it again." Back in Lincolnville, we see Ryder doing some target practice as we see a man in a suit walks up to him and says, "Damn, you never miss, don't you?" Ryder says,
I could say the same for you. What are you doing back in town, Kai?
"I thought you were out on that hunt."
Kai says, Well, I was. Till I heard what went down. Damn psychopaths at a farm. People wearing skulls for helmets. Sounds like maniac behavior if I've ever seen it.
Ryder says, "Well, I'm glad you're back." Kai says,
I heard the talk of the town.
"Aren't you going to tell me something?" Ryder just looks at him, and Kai says, "You're going to have a family, man. Hell, something I tried to have, and it failed." Ryder doesn't look all that happy, and Kai says, "Hey man, you really going to tell me you're not happy? Hell, you've always wanted an opportunity like this." Ryder says, "No, I'm happy. It's just, I guess I'm just not so happy they may not get a chance to even grow up here." Kai says, "Wait, what the hell are you talking about, man? You're doing it again." Ryder says, "What? Doing what?" Kai says, "Predicting the worst. Look, your kid will grow up here. Even if I have to nail every goddamn one of those psychos' heads in, I will. We're not losing anymore. You know what I think? I think you're expecting the worst. Because in some fucked up way, you've gotten used to that way of living. So let me ask you something. What did they do to you?" Ryder then shoots and hits his target perfectly as Kai looks on edge a bit, and Ryder says,
You know me. They didn't do a damn thing to me, but held me up. I'm fine.
Kai says, "Alright. Listen, I gotta go, but maybe we can share a drink later or something?" Ryder says, "Celebration drink, right?" Kai says, "Absolutely. That's more like it." As Ryder stands there and smiles a little. Back in Wyoming, we see Ragnar walking the streets as we see him stopping and getting a slice of pizza. We see him waving at people. We then see him walking the streets as he then sees a poster in a pawn shop's window that says, "Rob Johnson, our savior." Ragnar looks at this and says,
Well, there goes my fucking day. Guy plays one tune and suddenly he's the MVP? Do these people forget who made this man's career possible? Unbelievable.
We then see a man walk up to him in a suit and says, excuse me, Mr. Ragnar, do you have a minute? Ragnar says, plenty of them, but not one to share with you, Desmond. Desmond says, well, look, I'd like to talk to you about one of my clients I had yesterday. Real pain. He didn't really respect any of my people, and I just thought maybe you could set him straight. Ragnar says, look, I'm sure he's a hoot, alright, but I got a million other things to do today, alright? Enemies to fight, people to answer to, Rob getting his ass kissed, and now suddenly you have problems? Just play your part, alright, Mr. Walton? Desmond says, of course, sir. I'll stay out of your territory. Ragnar walks back into his office as he opens the door and sees the two guys from earlier that were fighting Holly. As Ragnar walks in and says,
does anybody knock anymore? God, I wish I didn't kill my assistant. Anyway, what do you want?
The guy says, well, sir, I wanted to discuss a bit of a problem we're having. Ragnar says,
Problem?
Well, it seems to be the topic of the day. The other guy says, well, we were just concerned about our opponent, sir. Holly from the new crew. Ragnar says, what about her? The guy says, well, she's kind of rough, sir. I'd really like to get someone more fair that doesn't go too hard on people. She's clearly letting out some built-up anger inside of her or some crazy shit. I mean, she damn near broke my arm, Ragnar. Ragnar says, you done? The guy nods and he says, okay, so, let me get this straight. Are you pissing your little wankers because you got beat up by a woman? Have we sunken that low? You sound like one of those sensitive pricks that used to claim everything was woke back in the day. Luckily, the world went to shit and that bullshit died with it. Thank Christ. Listen, boys, and yes, boys, not men, because, well, look at you. You have a problem with how things are going with that Holly girl? Then deal with it yourselves. Whatever you want to do. He gets up, and one of them turns and says, well, what would you do if you were in our position, sir? Ragnar says, well, to ease your pain and kiss your little boo-boo, I would corner her, I'd scare her a little, tell her it's my way now, or the high road. The other guy says, wait, like, do anything we want, basically? Ragnar says, yeah, sure, whatever. Look, you came to me and said that you had a problem, correct? The guy says, yeah, and Athena defends her. Ragnar says, well, that's a shock to the world. Look, you want something to change? He looks at them and says,
well, you better work on changing it then, son.
Back in Lincolnville, we see Ryder serving drinks at a bar. As we see Kai walks in and one of the guys says, hey Ryder, you got a customer. Ryder says, Kai, what can I get you? Kai says, surprise me. Ryder says, alright. Well, we'll just pull out the old moonshine then. Kai says, whoa, I didn't say get me hammered, man, Jesus. Ryder says, you know, I miss this. Even just a few weeks away, I miss this. Kai says, you seem different. Ryder says, yeah, I mean, being in captivity would make you a little different, I suppose. Kai says, cut the shit, man. You ain't you, man. You're not. You are not one for moping around with your head down. Ryder puts his head down and Kai says, see, head down. Ryder says, you don't know me. Kai says, hey, man. I've known you since we were on the other side of that goddamn border all those years ago. That's a long ways from now, and now you turn your back on me? After all that I've done for you. Ryder says, yeah, things in Canada were dangerous, but they're even worse now. All those people just living under that psycho's boot? Kai says, there it is. You know, I've been focused on your problems, but the problem is written all over your face. It ain't you that needs helping. You want to go back, save the people that you couldn't save. Ryder is pouring a drink and says, look, I know my mom thinks that I'm a fucking disappointment for not getting all of her people out of there. And hell, if I'm gonna take over and lead this place one day, how the hell can I do that if I can't even get everyone else out? Kai says, you want to go back, don't you? Ryder says, my mom would kill me if I tried. I'm tired of disappointing her. Kai says, well, we can figure a way around that. Frankly, it's been bothering me too. I got an idea if you just listen to me. Ryder says, what were you thinking? Kai says, you know where this Wyoming is located at? Ryder says, not specifically, but I know the general area. I'm sure we could find it. Kai says, well, that's all we need. We're gonna get in. But with us getting in, means the beginning is something else. Back in Wyoming, we see the arena closing down for the night. As we see everyone has gone home, and Holly is gathering her stuff in the changing room. As she hears a door open in the distance, as she yells out, I'm sorry, we're closed. You can come back tomorrow, though. She doesn't hear an answer, and she says, hello? Hello? We see these two shadows of two guys walking into the room. She looks on edge and says, who the hell are you? The men don't speak as she backs up against the wall and says, what do you want? The man says, shh. They hit her in the side with a crowbar. As she falls, as they start beating her up, she's trying to fight back, but her side is bleeding. They repeatedly punch her over and over again. As we see, she hits one of them, but he gets back up and kicks her down again once more. But then, we see one of them just looks at the other guy and just kind of tilts his head to the side. We hear a small chuckle. As he starts taking his pants off, as he forces her to the floor, as he then starts raping her, as the other guy stands there and laughs, as we see her crying, and as we see her pull herself together, as she sees his crowbar on the floor, but she can't reach it. She then sees her necklace from Morgan is broken into two pieces on the floor. As she quickly grabs the sharp end of the necklace, as she headbutts the man to the ground, and as she then slices his throat open, as the blood is gushing out, as she then stands there covered in his blood, as the other guy looks a bit nervous. As she grabs him by the collar and smashes his face against the concrete wall repeatedly and keeps hitting him against the wall over and over again until his head is nothing but mush. As she then falls to her knees and she breaks down. But then she takes the mask off of the man and sees it's her opponents. It's the guys she was fighting before. As she looks angry, and then we hear a door opening in the distance. We see Athena walking into a big arena. As we see, it's dark. As we see, no one's in there. She hears something coming from the locker room, and she says, hello? It's after hours. You should go home. It's past curfew. As she walks into the locker room, but as we see blood on the floor, as she pulls out her sword and says, hello? Anyone in here? She then sees two dead bodies on the floor. Athena looks pissed, and then she sees in the corner of the room Holly sitting there with blood on her hands. As we see, she's shaking, as Athena looks pissed and says, Holly, what did you do? As Holly is in a daze, as we see her hands are full of blood. Holly says, they tried to kill me. Athena says, I see that. But murder is murder. Later on, we see Holly locked up in a cell, as we see Athena walks up to her and says, "Hope you're okay," Holly says. "Why the hell would you care? You're keeping me locked up like an animal. After two men just did what they did to me? They raped me? Beat me? And you have the audacity to sit there and ask me if I'm okay?" Athena says, "Yup, and for the reasons you just said. We're gonna have a lot of cleaning up to do for this one." Holly says, "What, Ragnar? You gonna send him in here to fix everything? Jesus Christ, that's all you people ever do." Athena says, "Well, actually, but then..." We hear a knock at the door as Athena says, "Come in, it's open." We see Boots walking up to the cell. As we see a man in a suit. As we see the man says, "Hi, I'm Desmond Walton. I'm sorry about what happened." Athena says, "We're not here to hurt you, Holly. Quite the opposite, in fact. You were right. I'm keeping you here because of Ragnar. I'm keeping you here to protect you." Desmond says, "We better get our heads together. Because once we take this to Ragnar, once he figures out what this is, what happened, this could go one of two ways. This thing will either go our way, or it's gonna crumble right in our hands." We see Rob playing guitar in his apartment as he hears a knock at his door. As he looks on edge and says, "Be right there." He walks up to the door looking nervous and opens the door. We see it's Vel Hazer as she says, "Whoa, you look like you got one of those I'm gonna fucking kill you eyes. You okay?" Rob says, "Come in." They sit together and he says, "Ragnar always used to come by my place back in the day. I'd be sitting right on the couch, trying to write a new song. My mind would just be consistently going, and he'd knock on that damn door. He'd come in, ask me if I'd done anything good and productive with my free time, and I'd sit there and let him criticize every move that I did, as I just sat there and took it because he made my career big, and I never thought I could survive without him. Truth is, it took me years to realize that I made my own career, and he was nothing but a thorn in my side. And now," Vel says, "he's a thorn in all of our sides." Rob just then goes back to playing his guitar, as Vel says, "Well, for the record, I think your shit sounds pretty fucking dope, so let's fucking go." Flashback to 2013. We see burgers getting flipped over as we hear a voice saying, "Mr. Johnson? Mr. Johnson!" We then hear a chaotic fast food joint as we hear, "Go! Order 266, 378, and 256! Go! Come on, Rob, you gotta pick up the pace here!" Rob says, "I'm trying to, god damn it! Yo, can I get some fucking assistance on this shit? Someone help me out here!" Later on, we see it's after hours, as we see Rob having a smoke, as we see a car pulling into the parking lot, as we see a woman getting out of the car, as we see her walking up to the entrance, and Rob says, "Sorry, we're closed for the night." The woman says, "The signs are still turned on, though." Rob says, "Oh. Well, you might be talking to the lazy piece of shit who forgot to shut it off before he went home for the night." The woman says, "Yeah, maybe you should do that." Rob says, "Hey, you in the right spot? Because I'm pretty sure the modeling contest is down the street." She looks a bit thrown off, and he says, "Yeah, really got to start working on my pickup lines. I'm sorry, I'm Rob." She says, "Carrie, well, I was told to drop off my resume, so I guess I'll come back and see if the manager's around tomorrow." Rob says, "Hey, if you want, I can pass it to Kevin tomorrow. I'll put in a good word for you." Carrie says, "Why would you do that?" Rob says, "Well, because I see a woman that maybe needs a little bit of a helping hand." She smiles as he says, "See? I'm getting better. You smoke?" Carrie says, "I quit." Rob says, Yeah, I said that too." She takes one and says, "Why do you work here? Hell, you know more about me than my own therapist does." Rob says, "Well, they're overpaid." They share a laugh as we see her take a smoke. The next day, we see Rob being woken up by an alarm at 6 a.m. As we see he lives in a very small apartment on his own. As we see him getting dressed for the day. As he then looks at himself in the mirror. As he puts a fake smile on his face. As we then see him walk out the door. But as we then see an eviction notice on the door. As he looks pissed and just rips it off the door. We see Rob flipping burgers at work, as we then see people yelling order numbers all around. As we see a man in the background saying, "Rob, yo, you get your ass up there to the window and you serve that fucking food." Rob says, Sorry. As we see it turns into the early evening, as we see Rob on his supper break, as we see him eating at a booth, as we see one of the workers walking up to him, as he says, "Hey, yo, Mr. Johnson, you clocking out today at 7? Rob says, "Tesman, how the hell are you anyway? Fired yet?" Tesman says, "Fuck your mama, Johnson. I may have missed a day or two this week." Rob just looks at him and Tesman says, "All right, 2. All right, 3. All right, man, I fucked it all week, but see, I'm sick. I'm under the weather, man. I can barely breathe. I can barely survive today." Rob says, "Nice one." Tesman sits down and says, "Hey, I clock out tonight too at 7. You want to come by the house? I'm throwing a big beginning of the summer party there. Maybe you can finally get yourself a girl, you know what I'm saying?" Rob says, "Nah, I'm alright." Tesman says, "Why the pussy face, man? Turn that frown of yours and shove it up a motherfucker. What's with you?" Rob says, "I just got an eviction notice. I'm not really sure where my life is going right now, man." Tesman looks sad for him and says, "Fuck, man. How long you've got?" Rob says, 30 days. Tesman says, "Well, you can crash at my place for the time being if you got no way to getting yourself some money from now to then." Rob says, "Nah, man. I'm not gonna do that. I'll be fine on my." Tesman says, "I'm not taking it back, man. You get evicted, you know where to go. Hell, I'll help you. Get you right back on your feet. And you know what'll make you feel better?" Rob says, "What?" Tesman says, "Some company right now, brother." Rob looks down and says, All right, let's do it." Later that night, we see a house lit up in the distance. As we see a car driving by the house, as we see Rob gets out and enters, as we see a loud group of people in this house party, as he's just walking through them, as he sees Tesman sitting at the balcony, as he goes up to him to see Tesman, as he sees Tesman and a few of his friends sitting around playing cards, as he says, "You got room for one more?" Tesman says, hey, yo, hell yeah, man. Come on. Hey, guys, I want you to meet a friend of mine here, all right? Okay, now this guy right here, this is the 50th guy I ever smoked a blunt with. No joke. This here is Rob Johnson. He's a real ass homie. Rob shakes all their hands and says, hey, so what are we playing here, fellas? Little blackjack. One of them says, yeah, Tesman here thinks he's gonna get out with $500. But I think so far he's lost about, I'd say double in that in the last hour. The other guy says, bro, he's killing us. Rob says, well, Tess, get ready to lose a little bit more money, buddy. Tess says, hey, man, you're on. We see time going by, as we see there are a good few drinks in now, as Rob says, I fold, as he then sees in the crowd of people, Carrie. He looks at her and says, hey, I gotta take a leak, fellas. I'll be right back. One of them says, all right, hurry back, though. Tess is going flat broke over here. Tesman says, hey, motherfucker. All right, you ready to kick this into high gear? We hear their voices fading as we see him walk up to her, as she says, it appears to be a small world. Rob says, I was going to say the same thing. Who brought you here? Carrie says, my friends. They're friends of the host. What about you? Rob says, well, the host has kind of been pressuring me to come here, so here I am. Carrie says, solid. I guess some people are just hard to say no to. Rob says, have you heard back from the application? Carrie says, yeah, I start Monday. Rob looks happy and says, well, I guess we're technically co-workers now. Who do you think they assigned to train me? Rob smiles and says, let me buy you a drink. Carrie says, what about your game over there? Rob says, well, I could use to lose a few bucks anyway. As they laugh, as we can then see, Rob seems to have his confidence back. As the night progresses, we see them sharing some drinks, as we see them dancing together, as he then takes her back to his place, as we see them kissing each other, as we see them both having sex, as we see them sleep together. The next day, we see Rob pouring his coffee as we see her walk out, as he says, good morning. Didn't want to wake you. Carrie says, that was fun. Although, I do want you to know that I'm not usually that forward. So if you don't want it, Rob says, your number? Yes, I'd like that very much. And hey, I'll see you Monday for training. Carrie says, see you around. Rob says, Johnson. Carrie says, right. See you later, Rob Johnson. She walks out as Rob looks happy. But as she's leaving, she sees a torn up eviction notice. As she looks at this, she remembers the drinks that they had last night. As she remembers, Rob insisted to pay for every single one of them. As she looks kind of sad, as she walks away, knowing the hard time Rob is going through. Currently, we see Vel says, she knew? Rob says, yeah, she knew. Sometimes the ones that you love the most are the most dishonest. And it's not because they want to hurt you. It's because they know it will if they tell you. Vel says, so Carrie, how's this girl involved in all this Ragnar bullshit? Rob says, that came later. You see, I knew my rent was overdue. I didn't have much time to fix it. So I turned to the other thing that I knew I was good at. At least, I thought I was good at. Flashback to 2013. We see Rob down the street, as we then see he's renting out some movies. As he walks down the road, as we then see he hears music being played in the background. As he walks down the street to hear music coming from a building, and he looks intrigued, as he then sees a door open in the back, as he then tries to peek in, as he sees a band in a studio recording a song, as he's just standing outside the door, as a man in a suit sees him listening and shuts the door in his face, as Rob looks sad, as he just sits there on the steps and waits. 1 hour later, we see Rob is still sitting out there. As we see the man in the suit locking the doors, as he's walking to his car for the night, as he then is approached by Rob, and he says, excuse me, sir, can I talk to you real quick? The man says, I'm sorry, sir, we're closed for the night. You can come back tomorrow. Rob says, listen, I'm sorry to bother you. I wanted to ask about the bands you have in there. Those names on the walls. The man says, well, they're on my label. Very talented people and unique people. Rob says, well, how do I get on there exactly? The man says, well, you'll have to audition. We'll probably get you in, say, 5 or 6 to 8 weeks. Rob says, sir, I can't wait that long. The man says, excuse me. Rob says, that's time I don't have. The man says, all right, I tell you what, come on in after hours on Wednesday. That's the best I'll be able to do. And honestly, I can tell that you're not the take no for an answer type of guy, so I like that. So I'll take a chance on you. Rob says, thank you, sir. I'll be there. The next day, we see him flipping burgers as we hear Tesman says, so then I brought her to my folks. They met her and my dad said, son, you ought to settle down. Rob laughs and says, and what'd you say? Tesman says, well, I said, Dad, you know it's me, right? Rob laughs as we see Carrie's working in the background and says, wow. Well, you'll find someone one day, Tess. I believe in you. Tesman says, yeah, I know, but I'm still partying the last 3 years of my 20s before I settle down, get that gold shit on my finger, condoms break, and then next thing you know, I'm a daddy, motherfucker. Rob and Carrie laugh as Carrie says, so, babe, you going out to that audition on Wednesday? Rob says, yeah, although I'm not getting my hopes up. I mean, anything could go wrong. Carrie says, hey, don't say that. You have just as much of a chance as any of those other doofuses performing in that friggin' studio. Rob just looks at her and she says, I mean, skilled artists. Tesman says, yeah, you don't say that. Come on, I've heard you play rock. You can play some damn good guitar, too. Carrie says, you gotta show me sometime. Rob says, well, thanks, guys. Let's hope it goes well. We then see the manager walking out as he yells, all right, order 57, 62, 93, 187, 85, go, go, go. Rob says, all right, coming up. He says under his breath, you freak of nature. As we see Carrie and Tess have grins on their faces. We see them finish the song as Rob high-fives all of his bandmates as he says, so, how'd we do? The guitar player says, oh, we were flying, man! We got the best damn thing everybody's ever heard. The man says, well, I gotta be honest with you, Rob. That was just, to me, one of the worst things I've ever heard in my life. The bass player says, oh, come on, man, you're joking, right? The man says, no. Although, I mean, if you were talking about the music, then yes, it is indeed a joke. Rob says, well, do you want us to play another? The man says, no, I couldn't hear anymore. Bloody hell, you trying to make me go deaf while you're at it? The guitar player says, well, fine. We don't need you anyway. I mean, you forgot about the one little thing that's important in this world. It's called the music. The man says, why, yes, but that's the problem, though, gentlemen. I hear the sound of what sounds like a pub singer or something you'd hear at the rooftop of a bar at 3 in the morning that everyone would just throw tomatoes at. Gentlemen, look, it's a boring song. I mean, I would personally throw chairs at that type of singing. The bass player says, so it's a no? The man says, what do you think? Rob then starts packing up his stuff and says, yeah, well, we don't need this guy anyway. You know, one day I'm gonna make it in this industry and you won't be there to watch it. You know, you're gonna lose a hell of a lot more money than it took to squeeze me in here today. The guitar player says, I mean, I wish it didn't have to end this way. He lunges at the producer as Rob has to hold him back and he says, hey, all right, we're leaving. The man says, well, I highly doubt that, but there's the door. Rob and his crew leave as he then just sits there and looks at his team and says, I mean, who let them in here? Our standards are getting really incredibly low. As the days and weeks pass by, We see him just singing in coffee shops, as we see people looking annoyed. We see him playing his guitar on the street, as he hears people from far saying, "You suck! Get off the street!" As we see cars beeping, as we see him stop playing, as he checks his guitar case and sees there's only $5 and a note that he opens, as he sees written on it, "Stop while you can, you suck." Rob looks incredibly defeated as he goes home for the day. But as he gets to his apartment, he sees he's been locked out of it, with all of his stuff locked in. As we see, the 30 days are up, as he has been kicked out of his apartment. He sits outside the door with nothing but the clothes on his back and the one guitar that he has. We see Rob and his band performing at this bar, as we see a lot of people are partying to their music, as they then finish a song, as Rob looks happy because for the first time ever, people are enjoying his music. Rob then says, "Really? Drunk people? That's how far we've gone?" He gets ready to play another song, but then he sees these three men in fancy suits just whispering to each other at their booth, as Rob gets ready to play another song. After the set, Rob is walking out of the bar, as he then hears a gentleman at the table says,
He can walk the walk and hopefully he can talk the talk.
Rob turns around and the man says,
Mark Daniels, pleased to meet your acquaintance.
Rob says, "Wait, the Mark Daniels? Oh my god, you've produced albums like Rich Grayson's and Bruce Tillison's albums. What the hell are you doing on this side of town?" Mark says,
Well, I'm always looking for something special. And when I saw your talent up there, I knew I found what I was looking for. Please, come sit with us.
We see them sit together as Mark says to his guys,
Gentlemen, you can go get the car ready for use. We'll be leaving shortly. After me and my friend here have a little bit of a discussion.
They leave as we see Rob says,
I don't get it. Why are you talking to me?
Mark says,
Because I believe true talent, when it's put to good use, can change lives. Change how you live your life. And change your perspective on said life. And what you did? Well, I know an entertainer when I see one. You see, Rob, there's a difference between an artist and an entertainer. An artist knows things, true, but an entertainer knows the whole damn gig.
Rob says, Well, to be fair, sir, I do believe anybody could have gone up there and did what I did. I mean, every person in this bar is definitely 5+ drinks in, so we got that going for us. I mean, at this point anyway, I don't really think it counts for much. Mark says,
Rob, stay with me here. Now, I can fix things. I can get you from point A to point B. Very, very quickly, son. And I do want you to know, I do not make these kind of offers to just about anybody. You know what I saw on that stage? I saw a damn good entertainer that has very little to offer to this town, but you and your music is your way to get around.
Rob says, I'm just scraping by, sir.
Mark says, Well, what if I was to tell you that you could do much more than just scraping by? Rob, you were looking at a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity of a career in Hollywood. Now tell me the last time you ever heard an opportunity like that.
Rob says, I've had plenty of opportunities.
Mark says, Well, you care to share some of those wonderful opportunities?
Rob says, Well, listen, I'm not looking to become a rich snob here, okay?
Mark says, I love when people say that because either you're born a snob or you're not. Money just brings out the honest truth and what a person really is. And that's all I want from you, Rob. Now, getting paid $50 to work at some of the biggest shitholes in town sounds like scraping by to me. Let me ask you, how's your financial situation?
Rob looks a bit worried and says,
Well, just between you and me,
I got an eviction about a month ago. And a few hours ago, I was kicked out.
Mark says, Evicted, huh? Yeah, well, we can take care of that for you. Consider it a bonus of good partnership. I will pay for it all, get your equipment back. Now I got a list of songs ready for a good artist, but no artist, no face. Now you work for me. You let me manage your career every step of the way. And I promise you, after this, your life will get just a little bit better.
Rob looks tempted but nervous, and Mark says,
All you have to do is say you want this.
Rob holds back, but says,
I want this.
As we see a montage, as we hear a radio broadcaster saying, and there he was, Rob Johnson, with his first #1 single, For All the Fallen. Rob Johnson has been having a big year this year in rock music. We'll be back with more. This is 87.93. As we see the months go by, as we see Rob driving a fancy new car, as we see articles and posters and stations playing his music all over town, as we see one that says, Sold Out Arena in Austin, Texas, NYC, and more. As we see him driving up to a big mansion, as we see Carrie in the passenger seat, as he asks, What do you think? Carrie says, Oh my God, it's perfect. As we see a montage of them moving in, as we see Tesman and a few other movers bringing in their furniture, as we hear Tesman in the background saying, Well, holy hell, man! How many bodybuilders does it take to move a goddamn couch? Rob says, in the corner is fine, alright? As we see time going by, as we see him performing shows all across the country, as we see people in the audience crying just by seeing Rob's face, as Rob says,
It was truly one of the greatest years of my life.
Vel says, So you were like, big? Like truly cocksucking big? Rob gets up and looks out the window, as he looks sad and says,
I should have never taken that deal.
Vel says, Yeah, no shit. Your life wouldn't have been so fucking fucked. Rob says,
The day I took that deal, it was truly the death of who I was.
Vel says, Rob, I don't understand. How is that the beginning of this? Rob says,
It wasn't Mark Daniels. Not all of it, at least.
Vel says, I don't understand, Rob. Rob looks horrified as he turns around and says,
It's because of me.
Vel looks confused as Rob says,
'Cause I'm the reason Carrie is dead.
We hear the crowd screaming as the lights come on, as we hear the music booting up, as Rob runs out on the stage with his guitar and starts singing, as we see the crowd cheering his name, as we see Mark Daniels watching this from backstage, as a man walks up to him in a suit and says,
I gotta say, Mark, I'm impressed. Mr. Johnson has been the talk of the town for better than a year now. You got something really special going on with this one.
Mark says,
Thanks, Felix. Yeah, he's impressed me more than I thought he would, I gotta admit. I just hope that I can keep him under control.
Felix says,
Well, that's your duty now, isn't it? Now don't let him go. He's your strongest.
Mark's smile starts to fade as he watches all of his fans singing to his song, as Mark then says,
Be on your best behavior. Our lives depend on it, Rob.
Later on, we see Rob backstage signing off some albums and merchandise, as we see the people go by as he's taking photos with the fans. As we see the last one walks up to him and says, Hey, Rob Johnson? I'm Roger Douglas. I'm a huge fan, sir. Rob says, Oh, thank you very much. You want a photo? Roger says, I'd be honored, man. They take the photo and Roger says, Thank you so much for this, man. Honestly, man, I don't know how you do what you do. Rob says, do what? Roger says, well, keep up with it all. Must be a busy lifestyle. In life, sometimes, we have to take our time for ourselves, too, You definitely look like you're spent from it at least a little bit. But hey, I respect the grind, man. Keep on keeping real, man. Because sometimes, you gotta keep it real, Rob says, yeah. Thanks, Roger. Rob finishes his meet and greet as we see him go up to his hotel room for the night. He enters his hotel room as we then hear Mark's voice saying,
You did good out there tonight.
Rob looks a bit put off and says, Mark? Sir, is there something you need? Mark says,
I just wanted to congratulate you on this tour so far. Oh, and I also wanted to let you know that we're extending it out by 2, maybe 3 more months. Yeah, 22 new shows total here I'm seeing, Rob says.
I didn't agree to that, Mark says.
Well, I already signed it, so you're on tour anyway. I just figured I'd let you know. I was thinking of making it a little bit bigger, that's all.
Rob says, well, I got plans with Carrie. I got this event that she wants to go to with me now. I'm supposed to... What am I supposed to do, cancel? Mark says,
oh, well, you should have told me that. Unfortunately, the deal is done, so we'll have to just roll with it, all right? And just reschedule, all right? Now here is the list of upcoming shows and towns. We'll run through everything tomorrow, all right? And hey, get some rest. We have a photo shoot tomorrow at 8 o'clock sharp. Good work tonight.
He leaves as Rob looks rather stressed out. The next day, we see Rob on the phone with Carrie as she's saying, so afterwards, I was thinking we'll go to the Soldiers Arena for the game, and Tess will be there. Rob says, it all sounds great, baby, but Carrie says, you're coming home this week, right? Rob says, well, they decided to push a few more dates for the next 2 months. Carrie says, they is Mark? Rob says, well, yeah, I know it's out of the blue and I can't really always reschedule. Carrie says, Rob, I've barely seen you in months, and now you're telling me that you're gone for a few more? What about your friends? What about the people back home who care about you? Rob says, I wish I could get out of it, okay, but I can't. I'm sorry. Carrie says, I understand. Rob says, I love you. Carrie looks upset and says, I love you too. Rob hangs up as we hear a man says, Rob, you're on in 5. As we see him getting ready for the next interview, as we see he looks rather stressed out. As the weeks go by, we see Rob putting his stage outfit on. As we see his PR people are saying, all right, you're on in 10, Mr. Johnson. Rob looks tired and spent and says, I'll do what I can. Mark walks in and says,
What you can isn't enough for fans.
He pulls out these hard drugs and says,
Here, take these. It'll make you feel just a little bit more alive out there, alright? It'll make you feel like you're a real rock star, not this weeping, scared baby wanting his fucking mommy, 'cause I can only hold your hand for so long, Mr. Johnson.
Rob says, You serious? I'm not going down that road. I've seen a hell of a lot of rock stars go down that path. I am not taking that shit. Mark says,
You're not going down any road if you do it responsibly. Come on, all rock stars do it. I'm just counting on you to be the responsible one here.
Rob says, Forget it. I'm not getting involved in this. Mark says,
Involved? In your own mess? I'd say you're already involved. Now,
he puts over $10,000 in cash on his table and says,
Well, now how far are you willing to sell your soul for money and riches?
Rob gives in and says, Fuck it. His PR guy says, Rob, we're ready. Rob takes a few and downs it with a beer and walks out to go do his show. We see him on stage, and now he's doing all these insane guitar solos, and as we see, he looks all fired up now. As we see, the audience is going crazy for him. As we hear a news report saying, well, it's been a very successful year for Rob Johnson, more and more shows to come, and what fans would say is some of his best shows they've seen yet. Rob Johnson is truly hitting an all-time high in his career. More on that later on CBS. Rob and his band and Mark are watching this in the hotel room, and Mark says,
See? An all-time high of your career. You're impressing me, Johnson. I've never been more proud of you. Now you keep making me happy now.
He walks out, and his guitar player says,
Yo, this guy is a bag of dicks. You know that, right?
Rob says,
A bag of dicks that makes me money. And now,
I have a couple days off, gentlemen.
And now I get to go home, a financially stable man.
The bass player whispers,
Yeah, fair point.
A few days later, we see Rob playing basketball with Tesman and some of the other guys, as Rob says, and time! I knew we'd beat you. Damn, you gotta learn to jump higher, man. Tesman says, yeah, well, I jumped higher on your mama last night. Rob says, Jesus, what the fuck? Are you in 5th grade? Carrie walks out of the house as Rob says, take 5, boys. He walks up to her and says, hey, sorry, I didn't know you were back already. Carrie says, you got a second? Rob says, yeah. They sit on the porch as she then shows him a pregnancy test. As she says, it's positive. I didn't want to say anything just because I wasn't sure if it was or not. Rob says, what? You sure? Carrie says, yeah, I spoke to the doctor. I'm a few weeks pregnant. So we're gonna have to start making plans. Things are gonna change around here. Rob says, well, speaking of, I need to get back out on the road. I want to make a little bit more money. I gotta bring back more money than I did before. I mean, we're gonna be parents. Raising a kid, for crying out loud. Carrie says, baby, I want you home. I don't care about the money. We have tons already. Rob says, yeah, but according to Mark, that's not enough, all right? He always tells me there's gotta be more. There's always gotta be a reason for more, all right? He always explained that to me. He's explained it to me several times. Carrie says, I don't give a fuck what Mark says. You have a kid. Please, realize that. Rob, if you can't, I'll call him myself. I'll keep you home if I have to. Rob says, no, do not call him. I'll deal with this myself. Carrie says, I hope so. Because like it or not, you're going to be a father. Rob says, hey, look, I don't have time for this, okay? Me and the boys, we have to leave in an hour, all right? I love you, okay? As he walks away, and Carrie says, yeah, whatever. As we see Rob walking away. Later that night, after Rob left, we see Carrie sitting in the house all alone. As she picks up the phone and calls, as we hear her say, hi, you're Mark Daniels, right? Rob's manager? I found your number on the card he left. I hope this is the right number. Mark smiles and says,
Rob, your voice is a lot more high-pitched than the last time we talked.
Carrie says, cut the shit, asshole. My husband is tired, overwhelmed, and needs more time home. Mark says,
doesn't seem that way to me. I mean, he'll be in Vegas in a few hours. Are we talking about the same man? Hang on, is this a scam or something? Are we talking about the same man? We've had our issues with scammers. And I'm sorry, who is this?
Carrie says, his wife. And soon he'll have a kid to look after. I'm sharing some worries because my husband hasn't been himself lately at all. Because you've been pushing him to do things that he doesn't want to do, and I know he doesn't want to do those things. Mark says,
you done?
Carrie says, no, I'm not. Not until you tell me you're going to stop pushing my husband so much. He's losing sight of who he is. I don't even feel like I know him anymore. You know the first thing he said when I told him that I was pregnant with his child? Is that he needed to make more money. Because you put that idea in his head. Mark says,
hey, are you his mother or his wife? I mean, Rob could be into one of those kinky things, I suppose, but hey, I don't judge, alright? As long as he makes me money, I don't question it.
Carrie says, how long is that going to go on for?
Mark says, well, as long as he keeps hitting number 1, I don't see it changing anytime soon. Although, he'll have time to be a father. I mean, they all hit their peak for a few years, and then they slowly drop off in popularity, and then they're just kind of known. Once that happens, you can take your dog back. I'll be rich as fuck by then. And by then, you won't tour as much, alright? But for now, as long as I have these $500 drinks every night, that boy will be out on that stage entertaining people because that is what he was born to do. That's what I helped him realize he was born to do. Did you help him realize what he could do?
Carrie says, well, maybe it's time you stop while you can.
Mark says, oh, you're a nasty one, aren't you? What's your name again, darling? I didn't catch it.
Carrie says, it's Carrie, his wife. And I'm telling you to leave my husband alone when the tour ends. Mark says,
Carrie. Well, listen, Miss Karen, I'll have you know your husband is in great hands. And I'll be happy to tell you that your husband will be the biggest, she says.
Well, listen, Mark Daniels. Easy name to remember. You stay away from my family or I'll lawyer up. I'll be your worst nightmare. Goodbye. As she hangs up, as we see Mark's face goes from a smirk to an angry look. As we see the weeks go by, as we see every single night, Rob, Tess, and the band partying and getting high and wasted every single night. As we now see, even Tesman is wrapped up on this on-the-road life. Three months later, we see Rob and his band at rehearsal. As we see, they are all stoned and wasted out of their minds. We hear a door open as we see Carrie walks in and says, Rob? Rob turns around and falls on the floor as the band starts laughing. As Tedman says, Rip, get up, man, your girl is here. At least, I think that's her. As Rob then gets up and says, whoa. Oh, hey, Carrie, what's up? Carrie is standing there looking emotional and upset as she says, why haven't you been answering your phone, Rob? You haven't returned my calls for days. I've been trying to get a hold of you for a while. Rob is on the floor and says, hey. You want to talk? Well, hell, baby, I know just the place we can. As he points down and says, talk to the cock. She slaps him and he says, ah! You like it rough. Oh. She slaps him again and says, I had a miscarriage, you stupid asshole. Rob looks shocked and says, What? It's not... You're not? Carrie says, it's over. Doctor said it was my stress levels that caused this. And I'm willing to bet it's because you weren't there to fucking help me through this. Rob says, oh, you think this is my fault, huh? As we see Tess and the guitar player sneaking away from this conversation, as Tess says, come on, man, let's go. Let's get high in another room. The guitar player is whispering, yeah, man, let's go. This is getting awkward. Rob says, come on, baby, let's just talk in private about this, all right? She starts hitting him over and over again and says, get your fucking hands off me. You caused this. Rob says, oh, I caused this, huh? You're the one worrying about it. I mean, Christ, I did everything for you. I made the money. I did the touring. I did this life. I mean, Christ, all you had to sit there is just shut your mouth, sit down, and wait for the fucking money to roll in. I mean, you couldn't have even done that. It was not my fault that I was out here providing for the baby. And you just had to go ahead and fucking kill it because you're ungrateful. Because it's not my fault that you probably had a fucking abortion. Carrie looks disgusted by him and says, You go to hell, Rob Johnson. I'll be gone by the time you get home. Rob grabs her and says, and where the fuck do you think you're going, huh? She turns around and says, get off of me! She pulls out her keys and says, stay the fuck back. Rob tries to get the keys out of her hand, but as they then start struggling with it, as he then by accident hits her in the face as she goes down, Rob is put back by this, as he then realizes what he's just done. Rob steps back a bit, as the last thing he sees of her is her with a tear down her face and a bloody nose, as she says, "He made you like this, and you're just too stupid to see it. But you will. And when you do, it's gonna be too late." Rob lets her walk out as he stands there looking disgusted with himself. As time goes by, we see Rob sitting in an empty house, as we see him all alone playing his guitar, as we see him writing the words to the next song he's gonna write. Vel says, "And why was this song so important to you?" Rob says, "Because my regrets is what I let Mark Daniels do to me. And after Carrie left, I knew what it had made me. But I didn't want to believe it. And promises are the ones that I couldn't keep. So the song was built on my lie. And you know what? That was the biggest goddamn song I ever played in my whole fucking career. Life's a bitch, huh?" Vel says, "So, how did you lose her?" Rob says, "Like everything else, that was my fault." Flashback to 2016. We see Rob and Tesman and the others partying once again as Mark walks in on them wasted and he says, "Hey, get over here, you sick fucks.
You may want to come see this."
He shows them the charts and says,
"Look at that. 20 weeks in a row of regrets and promises at #1 on all genres. Rob, this is truly impressive."
Rob looks very happy and everyone makes a toast as Mark puts his arm around Rob and says,
"I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you, son. I knew you could do it. Now, let's do that again, shall we?"
As we see, the night continues, as we then see Rob blacks out. The next day, Rob wakes up to see the aftermath of the party, as he sees Tesman laying on the couch. As Rob taps him on the shoulder and says,
"Yo, Tess, wake up, man. We got a big day ahead of us."
"Yo, Tess. You hear me, man? We got a lot of things to get done today. Tess. Wake the fuck up!" He turns him over as we see his mouth is covered in blood and his eyes are wide open. Rob says, No. You can't do this to me now, please. Don't leave me like this, please. Don't leave me like this. Damn you for leaving me like this, please. I can't. Please, brother. I can't. As we hear police sirens, as we fade out to see Rob just sitting there on the floor with police officers standing in front of him. And the officer says, "You happen to know how your friend ended up like that, Mr. Johnson?" Rob says, I don't know. But I know I brought him to this. He didn't deserve it. He of all people did not deserve that." Mark steps in and says,
"All right, come on, guys, get out. Give him some space, all right? The man just lost his best friend."
Mark says,
"You okay, Rob? I know this must be hard and all. I mean, I'm willing to..."
Rob looks at him with a death stare and says,
"You know, I wouldn't have said this in front of the cops. But you fucking killed him. You
fucking killed him.
Mark says.
Well, I beg your pardon.
Rob says,
You heard me.
Mark says,
Well, I see we have some differences to put aside. Stop by my office later today. We have things to discuss. Someone's gonna have to answer for this.
he walks away as Rob just stares him down with a look of anger. Later that day, we see Mark Daniels sitting in his office as he's looking over to the next tour dates as he says to one of his guys,
All right, so from NYC to Philadelphia, well, then we'll take 2 days off from there, and we'll go on to the next week, starting with Bangor. Then we'll push on to our Canadian length of the tour. Then we'll go to...
We hear a knock at the door. As Mark says,
Jesus Christ, expensive door. Be a bit more careful next time. Come on in, you're late.
Rob walks in and says, shut the fuck up, Mark.
Mark says, Oh, someone's grumpy today. Well, I'm glad you're here because I gotta talk to you about this whole test situation. All right, now, we've got a couple cops on my ass asking what the source of this was, so we can't have that. Now, I was thinking of asking you who you wanted as bait for this thing, all right?
Rob says, excuse me? Mark pours himself a drink and says,
You want one? Nah, probably had enough last night, didn't you? Besides, we gotta figure out how we're gonna cover up your mess. The death of your little roadie there.
He pulls out a list and says,
Well, there's a few options here for people that could take the fall. Now, don't worry, all of them are believable. Now, they're good writers, so people will buy it. Now, let's see. Ah, yes, there's the guitar player. He's a little crazy anyway, but valuable, and the women like him, so that would be a loss. Now, the drummer he's a little risky, but if you wanted to, we could send him over to Con College, alright? Now, the bass player, just between me and you, alright? I never really liked that guy anyway. He's my personal favorite option, but he's a little slow if you catch my drift. But people would love it. It's a hot topic for sure. But if you're interested in keeping all your bandmates, I did have one more option lined up. Now, you may have to hear me out on this one. But imagine this. Psycho ex-girlfriend, struggling with miscarriage of her child, kills the wrong man and goes on a revenge spree. I could see the article now. Carrie miscarrying her plan. Crazy story, huh?
Rob says, shut the fuck up!
Mark says, I beg your pardon, Rob.
Rob says, I said shut the fuck up! As he bangs his fist on the table and Mark says,
I think you should watch your mouth there, Rob.
Rob says, enough! Everything I've done in service of you, from the moment you stopped me in that bar. I knew what it was. I knew it was all for you. But if I didn't take that offer that night, I'd be sleeping on the goddamn streets or somewhere else worse. You ruined my life. You ruined the chance of me being a father. You ruined my marriage. My work. And you took the last best friend that I ever had left in this world, and you fucking killed him. And it was all because of you. Because it was all so you could walk in on a weak moment, and then I said yes. And you could make all the fucking money you wanted. And now I don't even have anyone but the great Mark Daniels, who produces my music and who gets the last laugh while I go to the fucking funerals and think about the offer I took. You did this to me. You made my life hell. And you're why I'll never have a family.
Mark says, well, technically, you didn't have a family yet.
As Rob punches him in the face, as he stands over him, punching him over and over again, as he's crying and says, you didn't do all of this. You won. And I fucking lost. You ungrateful piece of shit! Mark is laughing and says,
well, now that that's all settled,
he grabs the paper off the floor and says,
now I do need you to pick one because I gotta fill this out soon. And I do need you on stage as soon as tomorrow, alright? So, take the night.
Rob then takes the paper and rips it in half and says,
I choose neither. If you want someone taking the fall to cover your ass again, say I did it. Say it was me. Because you and I both know that's what you do to me anyway. You don't touch a single name on this list.
He gets off of him, as Mark says,
And why would you take the fall?
Rob stands there and says,
Because I'm done. Because this life that you forced me into is done. Our partnership is done.
Mark looks speechless and says,
You can't walk away from me now, Rob. We're too powerful together. Hell, I could have had your ass in jail years ago.
Rob says,
Then I think you should pursue that. At least I'll have more safety behind bars.
He walks out and slams the door as Mark sits in his chair and laughs as he looks at the ripped up paper on the floor and says,
One thing he seems to forget is I didn't say we were done. You just walked away from the wrong person, Rob Johnson.
Rob is standing outside the building as he walks away, believing he's free. Later on, at 3 a.m., we see Carrie is fast asleep as we hear a doorbell ringing in the back. As she goes downstairs to see who it is, she opens up the door to see two men in suits as she says, can I help? Out of nowhere, she gets shot in the head by a silenced pistol as one of the men calls Mark as he picks up and says,
We got it done. Mark says, Good. That's all. Let the police take care of it from here. Stage it. Put the gun in her hand, leave her sitting on the couch, make it look believable. Good work, gentlemen.
As we see him hang up the phone. We see Rob arriving back to his empty mansion as he turns on the news and hears, reporting a sudden death of Carrie Johnson. Police are still investigating the scene, but it looks to be a potential suicide. We'll have more information on this soon, as Rob starts to break down, as he cries his eyes out, and then he turns to anger, as he goes in his room and pulls out a gun, stuffing it in his pocket, and walks out the door. We see him get in his car and speeds off in rage. He then hears his phone ringing as he's driving quickly. As he answers it, and he says, Yeah, we hear a voice on the other end saying,
You don't want to go down this path, Mr. Johnson.
Rob says, And why the fuck shouldn't I? That fucker killed my wife, I know he did. The man says,
Mr. Johnson, turn around and walk away with your life. This is not a request.
As he sees two different vehicles behind and on the side of him, staring him down, as he hangs up and decides to turn around and go home. As Rob looks angry and drives away. A few months later, we see Rob driving up to a church. As he walks in and hears a choir singing music, he just sits down and listens as he looks completely lost. He looks like he's holding back some tears as we hear a voice of a man saying, "Survived the worst, huh?" "Yeah, I believe that's why everyone comes here." Rob turns around and the man says, "Sorry to bother you. I'm usually a lot more formal than this. I'm Ryan Dutton. Mind if I sit down a sec? My wife will be here in just a minute, then I'll get out of your hair." Rob says, No, it's fine. Please sit." Ryan says, "Thank you." "So, you come here often?" Rob says, "Actually, it's kind of my first time." Ryan says, "Well, gotta be honest, you seem familiar, like I've seen you before or something." Rob says, "I'm a rock star." "Rob Johnson? You ever hear about Regrets and Promises or Forgetfulness, songs like that?" Ryan says, "Oh, God, yes. No, wow. Damn, man, let me just say, I think you're really, really good. My wife and I listen to you all the time." Rob says, "Well, it's too bad I quit then." Ryan says, "Wait a minute, you quit? You never even made it official." Rob says, "Yeah. There's things in my life that made me realize I didn't belong out there anymore. So, I just quietly slipped away." Ryan says, "Well, is there a reason why this is your first time in the church?" Rob says, "I don't know." Ryan says, "Well, may I share you an honest thought? As a loyal fan?" Rob says, "Sure, go for it." Ryan says, "You need to keep going." Rob looks unsure and Ryan says, No, I'm serious. Whatever the reason is for quitting, whatever reason you think you have, whatever made you stop, it can't be more important than your dreams." Rob says, "My dreams are gone because I put my career first. It's now time I put my career last. Focus on anything else. Maybe focus on anything else." Ryan says, "No, your dreams are gone because you didn't fight like you needed to." Rob says, "Well, what if I can't beat it?" Ryan says, "There's always a way to beat it. And if there wasn't, I don't think there'd be such thing as freedom, my friend. So you find your freedom. And if you like, come on by later. We usually have dinner every Thursday for the newcomers. You can meet some of the people that are going through the same struggles you are right now. Just think about it. All right? Let me know." He walks away as Rob looks conflicted. We see Rob says, "I wasn't sure what to do after Carrie was assassinated. I couldn't prove anything. I couldn't run to the police because Ragnar would take me down with him. So I just ran from everything. Ran away from my life, my feelings, and everything I knew that I was a part of. I almost didn't go back. And I shouldn't have gone back. In meeting Ryan, that was my mistake." Flashback. We see Rob driving up to the church in a nice shirt. As we see him walk in, as we see all these people gathering around, as we see Ryan walks up to Rob with his wife Amelia, as he says, "Hey Rob, I'm glad you came. This is my wife Amelia." Amelia says, "Hi, Rob, it's great to meet you. Honestly, can't believe I'm standing in front of you right now. I've been a huge fan for many years." Rob says, "Well, I'm glad to meet you, Amelia, and I can't thank you enough for being so kind to me. Your husband here is the only one that's truly listened to me for a good while. Honestly, still don't understand why." Ryan says, "Rob, come sit with us. We want you to meet Pastor Xavier." We see them walk into the dining room as Rob says, "Wow, this is all for us?" The pastor walks in and says, "Hello, Rob Johnson. Pleased to meet you. I'm Pastor Xavier. I'm the lead pastor here at the church. I'm glad you came." They all sit as Xavier says, "Now, I know you're a massive rock star, correct?" Rob says, "Was." Xavier says, "Why not anymore?" Rob says, "Well, Father, I'm afraid of having all the fame. That can kind of get overwhelming, and I don't really know how to face it anymore. Xavier says, well, Rob, why'd you become an artist? Rob says, well, my manager always said that I was an entertainer and an artist at the same time. Xavier says, yes, those are rare and talented people. I've heard you play. Why give that up? Rob says, my manager wanted me to tour forever, and I knew I had to leave before things got worse. And then eventually things did get worse. I'd rather not discuss the specifics. Xavier says, Rob, the last few times I've asked you about your career, you keep bringing up your manager. Rob, is your manager maybe the reason why you're holding back on your dreams? Because instead of quitting the dream, take your dream. Maybe bring it to a different direction. Rob says, yeah, I thank you, but I think it's a little too late for that. Horrible things have happened because of me. Things I don't want to talk about. Xavier says, well, you don't have to. But if you let me ask you one question, alright, just one. Do you want to keep playing music? Do you feel anything when the thought comes to mind of going on stage and doing a big show for everyone? Rob says, I feel alive. Xavier says, then I don't want you to tell me that anyone can stop you. It's not their lives, it's yours. And you decide how you live it. From the day you start till the day you die. People are born to do things on this planet, and I'm willing to believe, and I don't know you too well, I'm willing to believe that this is what you were born to do. Rob says, I want to do it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. Thank you, Father. Ryan says, no, thank you. Not many times you get to talk to famous artists like that on a daily basis. Tomorrow's a new day. Now you go out there and you do what you were born to do. As we see a few years go by, we see Rob touring worldwide, selling shows and albums all around as we hear him narrating. After that, I went out and hit some of the biggest highs in my career. I beat my drug addiction, I quit drinking, and I didn't do it for me. I did it for Carrie. I did it for Tesman. And I hoped after all the shit that I did, maybe they'd be proud of me. And frankly, I needed to be proud of myself. But nothing lasts forever. Currently, Vel says, so you got yourself back on your feet, but how? How'd you end up in jail during the outbreak? Rob says, because my fame, it had a price to it. Flashback to 2019. We see Mark driving a fancy car as he pulls into this lovely neighborhood. As he pulls into a driveway and gets out, he walks up to the door and knocks. As a man answers the door and says, Mark? What the hell are you doing here? Mark says, hey Tommy, may I come in? Mark walks in and Tommy says, you want a drink or something? Mark says, nah, I won't be long. This'll hopefully be a very quick visit. We see a little girl comes down the stairs as she says, Daddy, what's going on? Tommy says, oh, just an old friend from college, sweetie, it's okay. Go up and clean up that mess, okay? I'll be up in a minute. She goes upstairs as Mark sits down and says, now I didn't come here to reminisce. Tommy stops him and says, I'm not doing it. Mark says, oh, come on. You know I wouldn't have come to you if it wasn't important. It's one man, one time, and it's done. Tommy says, forget about it, Mark. The only reason I did these jobs for you back in the day is because you paid me good money. And you knew I had FBI experience, so you used me as your bitch. And hell, you knew my father. So I stayed loyal to you. But I have a daughter now. I have another life I'm responsible for. And she lost her mother to cancer. And I can't have her lose the only two parents that she has. Mark says, well, I respect that.
What if I was to say, you would never have to worry about finances ever again?
Tommy says, please don't put me in this position. Mark says,
Well, it's a one-time offer.
he throws him a bag of money, and he still looks unsure. And Mark says,
No? Alright, well, you see, Tommy, I might have forgotten to mention. You do this, and you will, because... remember something. I know where your daughter sleeps, and I need this done. What's it gonna be?
Tommy looks nervous and says,
You have a name for me?
Mark says,
Oh, just put your mind in the rock and roll genre and it'll tell you.
Later that night, we see an arena of people as we see Rob up there performing, as we see Tommy sneaking through the crowd, as he looks pissed and phones Mark and says,
Hey, Mark.
Mark says,
Hey, did you get it done?
Tommy says, no, he was supposed to be backstage. What did you think I'm doing, sending me in there to get killed too? You know what, I'm done. Mark says,
Well, sometimes plan B works better than plan A.
As he threatens him,
Tommy, don't let me remind you of why you're doing this. I mean, I'd hate to see the fallout if you don't do what I ask, and I'd really hate to see you reading your girl's name on a tombstone.
Tommy looks enraged and squeezes the phone in his hands as he says,
All right, I'll do it.
He hangs up the phone as we then see Rob playing guitar at the show, as we see him doing a big guitar solo, as we then see Tommy with a knife going up the stage with a hoodie on, as we see Rob takes his guitar and kills Tommy with it in front of the whole arena of fans. As Rob stands there, covered in blood, as we see his fans look horrified and scared of him, as he stands there and whispers, I'm sorry. As the guitar is covered in blood, and as it fades to currently, as we see a clean guitar, as he says to Vel Hazer,
I'm sorry. You didn't need to hear that, but it feels good to let it out.
Vel says, Rob, I didn't come here to reminisce. I actually came here to talk about your manager. Rob says,
What?
Did he tell you something? Vel says, It's not what he said. It's what he did. Rob, he forced me to gun down one of my people. And if I didn't, he told me that he would line them up and shoot them in the head. Rob says, What? Vel says, I didn't have a choice. He would have killed us all. Because that's what he does. And after, he made me do something for him. Rob starts to look furious and says, What did he make you do? Vel actually starts crying and says, He fucking raped me. Rob just zones out at that point and remembers everyone that died because of Mark. We see Ragnar sitting in his office as we see two of his men in the room, as one of them says, Sir, we saw a convoy heading down Highway 85. Figured you should know. Ragnar says,
Alright, we'll send Athena in the morning. Make sure they're gone.
The man says, yeah, one other thing, sir, I wanted to run by you. Ragnar says, What? Out of nowhere, we see Rob and Vel bust down the door as we see Vel jumps on one of these skull hunters and knocks the other down unconscious as she starts beating these guys up over and over again. Rob comes in and flips over Ragnar's desk, and as he grabs him and he throws him across the room, as he grabs him by the collar, as he repeatedly starts punching his manager over and over again, as he puts a knife to his throat and says, "From artist to a con man, I sentence you to death, Mark Daniels." As we see several men come running into the room, as we see they tackle Vel to the floor, as Rob turns around to see a gun click to his head, as Athena walks up to Rob and says, "Step away from him, or in the name of my father, I will fucking kill you, Rob Johnson." Rob takes the knife away from his throat and drops it as she holds him at gunpoint and says, "Just say the word, boss. Say the time, and I will do it, sir." Ragnar looks at this and then sees the blood on his face and says, "No, no. You don't kill an artist. And you most certainly do not kill an entertainer. I must say, you've kept me entertained, Rob. And besides, I got other plans for Rob that are much worse than a bullet to the goddamn head." Two men grab a hold of Rob, and two others grab a hold of Vel Hazer as he looks at Rob dead in the face and says, "You came here tonight for the truth and for my favorite artist? You have certainly earned the truth. You remember when I said someone would have to take the fall, right? Remember that?" Rob says, "Please, don't hurt any more of my people. Don't hurt any more of my people. I'll stop. Ragnar laughs and says, "You really think this is about your daughter? Someone took the fall when you didn't listen. So I took matters into my own hands. I had Carrie executed for murder of Tesman. That story did wonders on TV. People totally bought it. I mean, you got Tesman killed, so we had to do something. I was covering for you. And then, well, people took the fall anyway. Remember your old band members that were on the list? Well, I got them to work for me after you walked out on us. I said to them that you left and quit. And that's what you did, right? So they believed that you didn't want this job anymore. But they still needed a job themselves. Needed a life. And well, when the world turned upside down, and it turned into what it is now, well, they were the first ones to go." Flashback. As we see the deadheads all over the street. As we see Mark and his people and the band running back to their vehicles trying to get out of the area. As we see Mark and a few of his guys get in the van in time, but Mark sees the dead getting close to the van as he sees the guitar player, as he says, "Come on, we gotta get the hell out of here, Mark!" As Mark closes the van door and locks all of Rob's band members out and tells the driver, "We're all in. Drive!" As we see all of Rob's band members getting torn apart by deadheads outside. As we see blood sprays onto the window of the van. As we see deadheads banging on the window. And as Mark sees through the blood a name on a name tag of one of the deadheads that says, Ragnar Clayton, as he says, "And that's when I knew. Mark Daniels died with the rest of the world. I bet you wish I did. But Ragnar, he's very much alive. And you will be too. You see, Rob, I tried killing you in 800 different ways and 800 different times, but clearly the universe has let you live, so I'm not arguing with that. Like I said, I have plans for you, Mr. Johnson." They take him and Vel away
and he says, "Put them back in their rooms. Let them cool down. They'll be as good as new by tomorrow. My little puppeteers they are."
Rob gets locked into his room and he says,
"It won't ever change. This is the life. This is the life he built for me. Fuck.
Athena throws him in there and says,
You think you're trapped, don't you? Well, I'm trapped too. And after what you did, and after you killed my father, Rob Johnson's name will always be remembered.
as she walks out the door and leaves Rob there in his room, as once again, after all these years, Rob Johnson is trapped in the world that Mark Daniels made him live in. Rob says,
I get the feeling being trapped.
as we see him sitting there looking angry and emotional, as he says,
It feels like I've been living with the image of cell bars in front of me from the day I met him.
as we see actual cell bars, as we see Holly sitting in the cell, as we see Athena says, now, we say you were attacked, wrongly attacked, and raped. And in self-defense, you killed these men as a result. Got it? Holly says, why are you acting like this is some show I'm putting on? That's what happened. Desmond is sitting there and says, because you need to say it back to yourself. The judge will ask you the same questions in multiple different ways. And if you don't sell him on it, your story may not mean much. Athena gets a knock at the door. Athena, we're ready for go. Athena says, I'll be right there. All right, now, remember your story, keep your story straight, and make sure you're ready to tell it. Be as sorry as you can be. Holly says, do I look fucking sorry? Athena says, doesn't matter. You better start trying, because the last thing we need is for Ragnar to have it his way. She starts walking out as Holly says, why is Ragnar's way such a problem for you? Athena says, because there wasn't always laws and rules in Wyoming. Before there was a system in place, Ragnar would have executed anybody that killed anybody behind the walls. So yeah, if you don't act like you're sorry, you're gonna be sorry. Back in Lincolnville, we see Mara sitting in the infirmary as Elara walks in and says, how is she? The doctor says, doing great. Everything looks perfectly fine. The baby is healthy and happy. So there's nothing to worry about as far as I'm concerned. I'll give you 2 a minute. The doctor steps out and Elara walks up to her and says, hey, how you feeling? Mara says, overwhelmed a little, but also just relieved. Elara says, how so? Mara says, well, when I told you your son was actually happy, he actually wanted to be involved. 100%. Elara chuckles and says, well, I guess we did something right with that boy all these years. Mara says, I'm moving in with him this week. I want him there for me and for the baby. It wasn't exactly what I had planned, but Elara says, none of this was anybody's plan. But the best things about the type of world that we live in, my only compliment for this shit life is, people actually make found families. And as of today, you and me are family. Mara says, thanks. And congratulations. You're gonna be a grandma. Elara says, oof, don't remind me. Now get out of here. She smiles as they both go their separate ways, as we see Elara looks a little happy and a little nervous. She walks outside and she sees Mara talking to a guard, as we see Mara says, "No." "Where the hell did he go?" The guard says, "I don't know." Elara walks up to them and says, "Hey, what the hell is going on?" The guard says, "Timothy said that he saw Kai leave with 20 plus soldiers last night, and your son. They all went to get Rob and the rest of them out of that place, Wyoming." Elara looks seriously worried now and says, "Okay, I'll get the truck ready. I'll take Timothy and Frank. No one else leaves. Everyone stays ready in case they retaliate. Tell old man that I'll be back by tonight." As she whispers, "Son, you better have a damn good explanation for this." We see Ryder, Kai, and 20 plus men driving this huge van down this highway. As Kai says, "Why didn't you tell your mom you were coming out here, man?" Ryder says, "Because I knew she'd try to stop me, and I don't want her getting hurt. She's the one thing in this world I'm tired of disappointing. And now, here I am. I'm doing something just like my father would." Out of nowhere, they get hit by a truck as that crashes into their van. As Ryder says, "You okay?" Kai says, "Yeah, you okay, man?" We see everyone in the background pulling out their weapons as we see them run out into the back of the van, as we see Skull Hunters get out of the truck, as we see Athena throws a knife at Ryder as he ducks in time. She pulls out a sword as Ryder pulls out his machete, as we see Kai killing several Skull Hunters as they overcrowd him. As we then see a bunch of deadheads have heard them from the end of the road and start running out of the woods. As we then see them coming towards them, we see they're covered in acid. As we see some run and jump some Skull Hunters and start killing several of them. As we see one burns one of the Skull Hunters with the acid coming off of the deadhead's face. Athena is seeing this happen to her men as we see Ryder kicks her and she punches him, but then he slices her in the face as she just looks at him and smiles. As she says, "Burn or die, you fucking decide." He swings at her and misses every shot. She then says, "Too slow. It's okay though. This'll be fun." As we see a few deadheads run towards Ryder, as they tackle Ryder down, as Athena lets this happen and says, "Burn it is." Ryder then gets swarmed by these deadheads. Back in Wyoming, we see Ragnar in his office cleaning up his desk after it got flipped over by Rob. We hear a knock at the door. As he opens it, as we see Desmond, as Ragnar says,
Look, I'm really not in the mood for this today, Desmond."
Desmond says, "No, really? Well, what you're not in the mood for isn't really my problem, alright? Ragnar, I came to talk to you about a situation that needs dealing with." Ragnar says,
"What about?"
Desmond says, "Well, it was a situation that happened. A very traumatic incident that went down. 2 of your men attacked a new girl. Holly, maybe ring a bell? They did horrible things to her. Even tried to rape her. And she killed them for it. Now, you and I both know that that's self-defense." Ragnar says,
"Wait, so she killed 2 of my men inside my walls?"
Desmond says, "Your men attacked her first. And people are gonna want answers for that, on either side." Ragnar says,
"Desmond, have you looked around lately? The laws of this place aren't like what they were before. What do you expect to be done?"
Desmond says, "I'm asking you to be a man of common sense for once. They attacked an innocent woman for nothing." Ragnar says,
"Innocent? The whole reason why Rob and his little sheep of bandits are even here in the first place is because there is no such thing as innocence. So what exactly are you going to do about this, Desmond?"
Desmond says, "I'm going to be her defense lawyer. The woman was scared. She didn't even know what else to do. And I find it very funny that they would just attack her like that. Unless, of course, someone put them up to this. Now, I don't know where you get your ideas from, sir, but you are one few cookies shy from a cookie jar. So unless you have any other suggestions, Holly will get a fair trial." And that's final. Ragnar says,
"I appreciate everything you do here, Desmond. You take your job quite seriously around here. So do I.
Back on the highway, we see Ryder trying to keep these deadheads off of him, but then they all get stabbed in the back of the head by Kai as he gives him his hand and helps him up and says, "We gotta get the hell out of here, man. Oh, come on." We see some of their fighters are still alive as they fight through the deadheads together, as we see what's left of the Skull Hunters are dead. Ryder, Kai, and the rest of the men run into the woods as we see Ryder running with the others and says,
"It started." Kai says, "Ryder, they know we're coming now. What the hell are we gonna do?"
Ryder looks pissed and says,
"Good. Now they'll know what the West family is all about. Should have taught them that a lot sooner. You see, we're the type of family that kills anyone that stands in our way. It started by one outlaw, and that one man, that one day, put his family before everyone else. And he paid the price for that. And because he died, this family is still breathing. So if they know we're coming, then fucking let them. Because they're right where we want them to be."
as he smirks and says,
"Outlaws live on in the West family blood."
Back in Wyoming, we see Holly sitting in the cell trying to chew through the rope, and then she hears yelling from outside in the streets. She looks out the window to see streets being swarmed by civilians as she looks nervous to see what is about to happen. We see Desmond walking down the alleyway as he hears the riots going on in the street. As he looks confused, the enforcer then comes up behind him and whispers in his ear,
"Don't worry. This is for your own good."
as he knocks Desmond out. Athena is still fighting on the bridge as she sees acid deadheads are cornering her in all directions around the corner of the bridge, as she sees her sword is too far away for her to reach as the deadheads get closer, but then she has no other choice but to jump off the bridge as she falls into the water. Back in Wyoming, we see Ragnar walking up to Athena's apartment door with a loaded gun, as Holly hears a knock at the door, as Ragnar opens the door. We see the streets of Wyoming as we see spray painted on the walls of the buildings and windows. Rob Johnson is a killer. Take your songs out of your actions. He isn't who he says he is. Only a psychopath does what Rob Johnson does. Holly hears a knock at the door. As we see Ragnar opens the door and she says, "How did everything go with Ragnar?" But then we see Ragnar walking into the apartment as she looks afraid and says, "Ragnar, I didn't." Ragnar says, "Shh."
Take a listen.
As we hear the riots outside, as he says,
"It's like time never moved."
he pulls out a gun and says,
"You're the Holly that was with Vel Hazer's people. You know, I didn't get to know you too well, but Athena did. She kept you in here to keep you safe. Well, that shit just warms my heart."
Holly says, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, Ragnar." But then he takes the key and unlocks the cell door and lets her out. She walks out and says, "What are you gonna do to me? Where's Desmond?" Ragnar says, "Desmond isn't coming." Holly says, "Please, you gotta believe me. Okay, it was self-defense." Ragnar says,
Hey, relax. I need you to relax. I believe you. You were just defending yourself. You hear that out there? I need you to take your ears out of your ass and take a listen for a second. Yeah. See? I promised Rob that if he ever got out of line again, I'd make him pay the price. Well, last night he got out of line again. Well, this is it. Now all of my people down there believe that he killed my men and not you.
Holly says, You put this on Rob?" Ragnar says,
Well, the murder needs a face, and just so happens I have one.
Holly looks out the window and says, "No, this isn't right. I mean, he didn't do this. Why place the blame on an innocent man for something he had nothing to do with?" Out of nowhere, she gets shot in the head as Ragnar stands there with his gun as she goes down, and he says,
And that's why I had to kill you. You see, Rob, I still have plans for. You, well, you're his debt that he had to pay.
We see Rob looking out the window, seeing people in the streets screaming his name as he says, "No, not again." As he now knows this is Ragnar, as he hears a knock at his door, as he grabs his guitar as he's ready to use it, as Vel walks in and says, "Rob, it's me." "Fucktard on a stick, you're gonna rock and roll my ass out the window with that thing?" Rob says, "Sorry." "Are you seeing this?" Vel says, "Yeah, I saw. I think the whole goddamn state saw this shit. We need to get you the fuck out of this place now. Even if I have to pull Rainbow out of my asshole, then we'll make it happen. Come on." Rob says, "It's happening again." Vel says, "What? What's happening again?" Rob says, "I saw these words when I was out there looking for Jade. I thought it was just nonsense, but I got people hurt. I got you hurt, my wife, my friends, my daughter. It's all because of my poor decisions." Vel says, "Rob, I love you, bro, just like a fucking brother, but you gotta kick whatever shit is stirring up inside you and come with me now. If we stay here, we die." Rob says, "We'll never get away." Vel says, "Well, we sure as hell are gonna try, even if it means me staying behind. I've been thinking of the last thing my sensei told me. You leave no man behind." Back with Ryder, Kai, and the others. We see them walking through the woods as Kai says, "All right, what's the plan here, Ryder?" Ryder says, "We go in, get our people, and go home. I've done this type of thing before, and I'll do it again." Kai says, "And what if it doesn't work this time, huh?" Ryder says, "You backing out?" Kai says, "Fuck no, man, I'm not leaving you. I'm just asking. Are you sure this is the way? You get signs on this type of shit. That encounter we just had? There's a lot more where that came from." Ryder says, "No. Because think about it. Ragnar and the rest think that the group that they sent out stopped us. I mean, he sent Athena, for crying out loud. He thinks it's handled. He thinks we're dead. So we can go there, and they'll think we died. We can get in, and we will get in." But then, we see skull hunters come out of the woods and start surrounding them from all sides. Kai looks pissed and he says, "This part of your plan, Ryder?" Ryder says, "Oh, don't worry, we can get out of this." The skull hunter says, "Really? Somehow I don't see that happening. You're coming back, and we're gonna get..." Out of nowhere, they get lit up and shot up by Elara, Mara, and a few other men. They run up to them, and Mara says, "Ryder, are you okay?" Ryder says, Yeah, I'm fine. The hell are you doing here?" Elara says, "Just like your father, stubborn." "What the hell are you doing?" Ryder says, "Mom." Elara says, "Don't you mom me. What are you doing out here?" Ryder says, "I came to kill Ragnar. I came to get our people out. Vel, Rob, Holly,
We gotta get them all out, Mom. He's holding them hostage. And I've seen the type of things that this man has done to our people. It ain't pretty.
Elara says, I know, but if you're gonna do this, you're gonna let me help you. We do this the right way, just like we did before all those years ago. Ryder says,
All right, lead the way, Mom.
Back with Athena, we see her washing up river as she is crawling, as we see a stick is stuck in her leg. She's in a lot of pain, as she then sees 2 deadheads approaching her, as she looks determined, as she slowly pulls out the stick out of her leg, as she screams out, as she uses the stick from her leg to kill both of these deadheads approaching her. She looks at her bleeding leg, and her head is bleeding as well. As she hears more deadheads coming, as she starts limping away to get back to Wyoming. Back in Wyoming, we see 2 guards at the gate as they hear a truck coming, as the guy says, Is that Athena? She back? They see Elara and Ryder and a group in the van as they look worried as Ryder peeks out the window and pulls out a grenade and says, Howdy, gentlemen. He throws it and it blows up the front gate of Wyoming and kills both of the guards as they bust through in their van and drive into Wyoming. Elara says, Ryder, Mara, you go for Rob's place. The rest sweep the compound for Vel and Holly. They can't be far. I'll circle around, make sure we're clear. As we see them split up, we see Rob and Vel running down the hall as they run down the stairs, but then they get cut off by 6 men with knives and swords, as Vel says. Shit. We see Ragnar runs onto the main street as we see some of his skull hunters as a bunch of his men get gunned down as some jump on top of Ragnar to save his own life. As we then see a few of the Lincolnville soldiers walk up to this as they walk up to Ragnar, and one of them says, So you're the head of the snake? Ragnar says,
And who tried to kill who?
But then we hear a growling approaching. As then we see Frost comes in and starts ripping these men apart as he saves Ragnar's life. Ragnar gets up as Frost runs to him, and Ragnar says,
Frost, I knew you had it in you. I knew I at least could count on you.
We see Vel stands in front of these men as the man says, Rob Johnson, you've been a hard man to find. You're gonna come with us now. Vel pulls out both of her swords and says, And who the fucking fuck said he was fucking coming with fucking you there, you fucking retard? The man says, Oh, aren't you a small little weak woman? You couldn't even protect your own people. You're gonna want to move aside or we'll tell Ragnar you made us do this. Vel says, Yeah, and then I'll take Ragnar. Besides, my blade needed a little poke. She slices one of them in the throat as they all pull out their swords and start fighting up the stairs. Rob punches one of them and flips him on the ground. He then takes his gun and shoots 2 of them. He grabs another one and repeatedly punches him over and over again as Vel runs down the hall to get the last one. She then pushes the man into a spike on the wall. As he is left to bleed out, he's spitting out blood as Vel looks at him, dead in the eyes, and says,
Look at me. Look at me.
She then starts slicing him up as the blood goes everywhere. Rob then says, Vel, we gotta go. Vel has a smile on her face as she feels free once again. We see Ragnar running with Frost as Frost looks to be getting tired as he falls down, and Ragnar says,
Frost, we gotta get somewhere safe. Come on, we need to go. You're a fighter. Don't you give up on me now. I'll tell you what. I can get you to...
Out of nowhere, Frost gets shot and killed by Ryder as he goes to shoot Ragnar as he notices it's his last bullet. His gun is now empty as he says,
Oh. Okay. Looks like we're gonna have to do this one the old-fashioned way.
He pulls out his machete as Ragnar looks furious and says,
You fucking bastard!
He runs at him and they both knock each other down as Ragnar starts punching him over and over again as he says,
I sent you away! I sent you to that factory in the hopes that you'd run away and yourself! How did you survive?
Ryder punches him and says,
Here's the difference between me and you. I don't feel any emotions. I don't rage. I don't cry. I feel nothing. And now you know what it's like to be faced with the outlaws, motherfucker.
He pushes him off of him as Ryder starts getting shot at. As he runs away with his life, Ragnar looks pissed and says to his men,
Go, follow him now.
We see Rob and Vel running through the streets as we see skull hunters block them off. As Rob and Vel stop, as Rob stands there and whispers,
I'm sorry, Vel.
Vel says, It's okay. Maybe we just weren't supposed to. Out of nowhere, they all get gunned down by Elara and Mara. As we see the other remaining soldiers as she walks in, and Elara says, You both okay? Vel looks relieved as Rob looks happy to see her. And Vel says, We really gotta stop meeting like this. Elara says, We gotta go, now. We see Ryder runs up to them as he says,
Hey, we gotta get the hell out of here now. They're tailing me after I killed that fucking animal.
Rob says,
Wait, you killed Frost?
Ryder says,
We don't have time. They all know we're here. Come on, we gotta go.
We see a group of skull hunters down the street as they start running towards them as Rob, Elara, and the others see their shot as they all bolt it to the gate as they flee from Wyoming, but as we see everyone run out. Vel closes the gate and locks herself in and sacrifices herself so that they can get away. She locks herself inside as we hear Rob says,
No, please, no, don't do this, Vel, please.
Vel says, Go.
You survived all this, and you have to survive now. You all have a family to go back to. Go. Tell my people I'm sorry. Tell my people I tried. Go. And go while you still can. My story ends here.
Mara says, Come on, Rob, we gotta go. We gotta go. Rob is trying to fight her as they then pull Rob away as they all run for their lives as Vel locks herself in and saves everyone's life. The skull hunters surround Vel around the wall as we then hear chains being dragged through the snow as we see Ragnar covered in blood as he stands there with Frost laying there dead in front of him as he says,
Well, you know when I said I wanted to see more of you? I think you've seen enough. The fallen Haven can rise again. But our journey together, Vel, is done.
But as we hear, Stop! We see Athena limps and walks through the crowd of skull hunters as she says,
What have you done?
Look at yourself, Ragnar says.
What happened to you?
Athena says, You really have the nerve to ask me that type of question after what you just let happen to this place? Ragnar says,
What I let happen to this place? Or what they fucking did to this place? They have taken so much from us. And now I'm gonna take something from them.
Athena says, Taking her life? That is not worth it. Keep her alive. She serves us way better alive than dead. Ragnar looks furious as he says,
Alright, alive. Under one condition. It's what we did that night at the skate park. Time to twist the knife, Athena. Ragnar smiles as he pulls out one of Frost's teeth, as he gets two men to hold Vel back, as he says, "My Frost was the last thing in this world that was precious to me. Without that, you're gonna meet the real me, Vel Hazer. I truly don't know what else I could say besides congratulations. Your face will be a leading example to these people." As he uses the tooth to stab her eye out as she screams out in pain, as we see blood running down her face, as we see the sun coming up, as he says, "The drawings of a new day, and today's the day." As we see Rob, Elara, Ryder, and the others running through the woods, as we see skull hunters in the distance on their trail. As we see skull hunters standing outside the walls of Lincolnville. As we see the castle, as we see all of the families and fighters all lined up in a line, as we see them bringing Vel Hazer in, as we see her bloody eye with blood running down her face, as she looks terrified, as we see the skull hunters standing in front of her people, as Vel tries to look away, but two skull hunters keep her from turning her head, as we see the skull hunters all load their guns and shoot every last one of her people in the back of the head, as we then see blood sprays all over her face as she lets out one big scream. As Ragnar stands there smoking his cigarette and says, "Savor your tears, sweetheart, 'cause I'm only just getting started." We see Ragnar walking through a cellar, as we see him grabbing a notebook and writing stuff down, as we see him writing two names, Dawson and Lisa. We see him step out of the cellar, as we see a man in a field holding two swords. We see this man on his knees looking at the grave, as we see Ragnar walks up to him and says, "I hope they bought it. And after what Vel Hazer did, I know there's disappointment there. The West family has ruined our name, so it's time to expose them for what they really are."